What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day, another episode of The Daily Grind. I'm your host, 30NSG, and on today's show, it's an all-full show of Assassin's Creed stories, news stories, videos, talk, just everything. Today is the day that Assassin's Creed Shadows comes out. I will not be playing it because I haven't bought an Assassin's Creed game in about a decade. Just it's the same old for me, so I just don't like those games anymore. Not saying it's a piece of crap. Or saying it's the best game in the world. I'm just not interested in Assassin's Creed anymore. The last one I bought and played was either Unity, and it came with the Xbox One, I think. Right, that's the last one. The last one I actually purchased, I think it was Black Flag, I believe. Right. So on today's show, we're gonna be looking at a couple of different reviews. The reviewers that I have right now up are Morsimal Gaming. We have Legacy Gaming, we have ACG, and we have one more, Jorraptor. Right, so we have four different independent reviewers, not with any of the mainstream media in any way, shape, or form. I just picked four of the ones that I usually watch for game reviews and whatnot. I don't know the hours they have. I have not watched one single review of these four. I did see glimpses of Matty Plays. But he didn't play the whole thing. I think he only played like 4 or 5 hours, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to talk about Paul Tassi's article, Ubisoft dev, Bounding into Comics, Ubisoft dev confirms high stakes for Assassin's Creed Shadows. If the game performs moderately, we're really in trouble. We're also going to be talking about Forbes' article, Assassin's Creed Shadows review scores are in, and they're what you expected. Also, Assassin's Creed will show you the Open Critic score, and we'll show you the Metacritic score. All right, so let's get started with the story first, Ubisoft's story first. What's going on, chat? Let me actually say hi to chat first. What's going on? What's going on, Jason? What's going on? Well, let me scroll all the way up. What's going on, Travis? What's going on, Eclipse? Sarge? Ghost Fixer? Nate, what's going on? Good morning. Waterbear, good morning. Who am I missing? Kylo, good morning. Ron Slusher, good morning. Who else am I missing? Roic, good morning. I think that's everybody so far that's talked in chat. Robert Jones, good morning. Sorry. All right. Kylo says Matty played about 15 hours, he said, and he won't play any more of it because it's the same Ubi formula. I mean, I could tell you that without even playing the game, right? I could tell you that without even playing the game. All right, so let's go with Ubisoft confirmed high stakes for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Quote, if the game performs moderately, we're really in trouble. Now, this is from a dev. It says, in an administration that will also come as little surprise as a larger player population, a member of the Assassin's Creed Shadows dev team has confirmed that the upcoming franchise entry is shaping up to be a make-or-break moment for Ubisoft as a whole. Okay. It says, the insight into the French developer's shaky standing was provided by the public courtesy of a March 16th report from the BFM Tech & Co. reporter, Melodon Davan Solas, speaking to the number of Shadow devs ahead of upcoming 2025 Game Developers Conference. Was told that the anonymous team member that they were also aware that just how much was riding on this game's success and thus had used extra effort to be timed with the game's second delay and really tried to hammer out the issues. Remember, they didn't delay it to polish it, okay? It says, if the game performs moderately, we're really in trouble, said the dev. In Shadows sells very well, we'll be able to start breathing a sigh of relief. We don't know that number, by the way, right? We don't know what that number is. Like, their expectations for this could be, let's say, 5 million. And if it sells below that, that's below expectations, and they could be in trouble. If they need to sell 10 million, okay, and it sells 5 million, they could be in trouble. If they only think they could sell 4 million and it sells 6 million, well, they're actually a sigh of relief. But in my opinion, based on all the stories we've heard about Ubisoft, about selling off IPs, there's like a mutiny going on with inside the company itself. They might be being bought out by Tencent, selling off IPs to either EA or Microsoft or either other companies. There seems like a lot more behind here, not just if Assassin's Creed. This one could sell as much as Valhalla, and I think they would still be in trouble. Again, just based on all the other stories we've heard about money issues and the stock price and everything else. So we'll see what happens. So another noted, the team's crunched like never before to finish it. Oh, where's those stories, huh? Where's the crunch culture? They really needed the extra month. Now imagine this. The game was supposed to come out in November. It was supposed to come out in November, and thank God it didn't, because it would have been broke, buggy, and unfinished, and you would have been playing in November and December and January and February and March. It would have been 5 months to the point that it is today. Now, when they release it, I don't know. I haven't seen any scores of actual the masses of people that are playing it, okay? But they were going to sell you a broken game, so much so they sold you a $120 version of the game and then decided to take away the first DLC and put it into the actual game itself. So there's seniors who also worked every day to complete it, and they added it was pretty crazy. However, far more being guaranteed playing music as a Titanic sinks moment of Ubisoft. Further team members informed that they were also actually optimistic about Shadow's potential for success, as though as the pre-order numbers were not near the level of franchise top earner Valhalla, but they were on par with those of runner-up Assassin's Creed Odyssey. They were 7% lower, wasn't it? Didn't we read that article? Was it 7%? It was 7% lower than Odyssey. So it was on par, but it was 7% lower. It says, already, it sells like Odyssey, which is the second best-selling game of all time, and we're happy to say, said the insider. As noted above, the apparent fact that Shadow's performance sold particularly high stakes for Ubisoft's future is not shocking in the latest, given that the recent subtles. From the flopping of numerous big-budget releases like Star Wars Outlaws and Skull and Bones, which were both mega flops, right? People came out and said, no, Skull and Bones is really good. It didn't sell very well. Regardless of what you think is good or bad, doesn't matter. The business side, Skull and Bones didn't sell very well. Star Wars Outlaws, I played 50, almost 60 hours, okay? I enjoyed the game, but the game was broke, buggy, and unfinished when it came out, and they fixed it since then. And since that, when they put a game out that was broke, buggy, and unfinished, Star Wars Outlaws failed miserably, okay? Shutting of the live service, X-Defiant is also closing down to multiple rounds of layoffs and to slow decline of the Assassin's Creed franchise in general, and this is to say nothing on the ongoing Shadows debacle. Ubisoft's last few years have been an absolute masterclass in not only how to not run a video game studio, but how not to run a business in general. Amazing. Okay. Now, remember, WB has been blaming Suicide Squad, and because Suicide Squad failed, even though Hogwarts Legacy made $1.5 billion, because Suicide Squad failed, these other games shut down. Well, Skull and Bones failed. Star Wars Outlaws failed. X-Defiant's closing. So where's the article on this where the rest of the games that are coming out are failing because these games didn't sell? I'll wait for that. Okay. It says, in fact, that things have gotten so bad for the once esteemed developer that investors are now open revolting against the leadership, which is the minority investors even threatening to stage a physical protest outside of Ubisoft's headquarters unless a serious plan of action is provided. Meanwhile, Ubisoft founders of Guillemot Brothers are reportedly exploring the options of selling the company off to completely separate entities of possible Tencent, who already have own minor stake in the operation. Okay. All in all, one thing is absolutely clear, that Ubisoft needs Assassin's Creed Shadows to do exceptionally well. Okay. And well, it hits shelves on March 20th, which is today, as any other results will likely mark the beginning of the end. All right. So there you have it. This is coming from the inside of their own studio. This is coming from a developer itself saying that if this underperforms, they're in massive trouble. All right, so what I've decided to do is dedicate the entire show to Assassin's Creed, because maybe some of you are on the fence and you guys don't know if you want to get Assassin's Creed or don't want to get Assassin's Creed. So I'm going to go and show you multiple reviews. Okay, you take the reviews, what you want from the reviews. If you think they're shitting on the review or if you think they're not shitting on the review, that's up to you to decide, right? I'm going to help you spend or not spend your hard-earned money if you decide if you want to get a game or not. Now, Assassin's Creed, we're going to go to Forbes article. Okay, Assassin's Creed Shadows review scores are in, and they're what you expect. Okay, if you guys like what I do here, we do this Monday through Thursday from 10 o'clock in the morning till noon Eastern. If you like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to go above and beyond that, become a member as little as $5. So Assassin's Creed Shadows review scores are in, and they're also what you expect. I think it's funny. Yesterday, I'm going to bring up Travis real fast because we were talking in Discord, right? This is not the shit on you, Travis, in any way, shape, or form, okay? But it was funny because I said 82, right? It's an 82, and I don't think that's a bad score, okay? Obviously, I played plenty of games that are in the 80s, low 80s, mid 80s, okay? 82, Travis came out and said, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, right? And then I showed him the score of Starfield, which was 83, right? And I remember Travis, and I remember a lot of other people saying that 83, that's shit, right? So I just laugh. I laughed. I made this yesterday in our Discord. Oh, I made this in Discord yesterday. Let me bring up the picture. All right. Like, here it is. This says what the gaming industry is all about. Okay. There's just Starfield 83. I don't want that shit. AC Shadows 82. That's right. Perfect game. Okay. So it's interesting to see how people react to different scores for different games. Now, I get it. If you don't like a game, you don't like a game. Not every game is not made for everybody. Okay. But to say one game that has a higher score than the game that you like is shit is just silly, isn't it? Isn't it? Again, that's not just directed towards Travis. That's directed towards anybody that thinks that way. Right? Yeah, look at 30 making memes. That's right. Okay. So it says a few days ago, before the launch of Assassin's Creed Shadows on Thursday, March 20th, the review embargo is now lifted and the reviews are flooding into across the gaming landscape. As for scoring offerings, with a few dozen reviews in and more to follow, at the times of this writing, Assassin's Creed Shadows has 82 Metascore on PlayStation 5, an 84 on Xbox, a 77 on PC. Since then, on Metascore, just to let you guys know, right now, Xbox has an 87, PlayStation has an 81, and PC has a 78. This 9-point difference from Xbox to PC, that's got to be a little worried if you're a PC player, because that means there's something going on there for the port, and it's just not right. Okay? It says, this is fine, question mark. Pretty good, question mark. Mainly is more and less exactly what you expected from a big Ubisoft game, no matter how high profile it may be, not usually a disaster, not usually absolute flooring anyone, and racing towards Game of the Year contention. For context, here's how the mainline Assassin's Creed games have scored most reviewed platform. Okay, so there you go. Assassin's Creed, PlayStation, 82, which now is an 81. We have Assassin's Creed Shadows at 82, Assassin's Creed Mirage at 76. We have an Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 80. We have Assassin's Creed Odyssey at 83. Origins at 81. Syndicate at 76. Unity at 72. Black Flag at 88. Creed at 84. Revelations at 89. Brotherhood at 89. Creed at 90. And the original one at 81, right? When you look at these scores, okay, you would think that the 89 or the 88 are like the greatest games ever created for them, and they would have the most money and most copies sold, but that's not how that works, right? These are two separate entities of what people think the game is and then what a game sells. So obviously we all know that the highest selling Assassin's Creed game is Valhalla. It sold almost 20. I think it is. I think it's surpassed 20 million, and that's at an 80, okay? So Shadow's coming out at 82. You can't say it's going to be bad or good. The market bears what the market bears. The market tells you if they like the game or don't like the game. Now, it could be the greatest game ever created by Ubisoft. But because of the optics, because of all the past months, because of the last year of what they've been doing and what they're saying, and now at the finish line, right before it comes out, saying they're going to quiet people down because of harassment instead of just letting the game speak for itself, I think this is even going to hurt the game even more, in my opinion. Okay? It says, the trend line is clear. The highest score ones are a decade or more old and somewhat of the quality dip, and then things mostly start looking up for a bit for the Origins come around. Okay? But almost everything in between a 75 and an 89. So an 82 is no great shock. And big scores do not necessarily mean biggest sales. Exactly. Okay? Assassin's Creed Valhalla with an 80 score, there was the most successful release of the franchise. Okay? Ubisoft has lost 77% of its value in the last 5 years. That is absolutely insane. Okay? That is absolutely insane. 77% of your value, okay, in 5 years. I think the only other company that can say that is Kathleen Kennedy with the Star Wars brand. They probably lost like 80%, if not 90% of their value. I'm not talking about the company itself, just the public, the way it looks at Star Wars. They've lost like 90% of their value. Okay, so obviously Shadows here needs to be a top performer. Fans have, in fact, been dying for a samurai/ninja era AC game for pretty much the entire lifespan, and now it's finally here. Okay, while everyone's also waiting for Sucker Punch to release Ghost of Tsushima, a stellar samurai ninja game, it's in its own right. It's one that deserves the higher and then its own 83 Metascore. And people love Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is probably one of the better games ever created with the samurai in it that people really, really, truly love. It scored an 83. Okay, Shadows is supposed to be less sprawling than Valhalla, at least at the option of two protagonists with widely different playstyles offer different dynamics. But if the players were also hoping for some pinnacle of AC perfection and surprise mass critical hit, the more or less it seems like just another Assassin's Creed game. Okay, and that line right there, just more or less of an Assassin's Creed game. If you are an Assassin's Creed lover, you love Assassin's Creed games, this is going to be another game that you absolutely love. And you'll be one of the people that defend this game when someone tries to talk down on it, okay? But if you're a person that's peeked behind the curtain and said, you know what, I'm done, which is myself, okay? It's the same old formula, and I'm bored of that formula, right? So that's why I'm not shitting on Assassin's Creed. It's not for me anymore, so I don't partake in it, okay? Desire setting or not. It says, Ubisoft, all for the reality matters at the end of sales. It will find out how things pan out for what that front from here. So there you go. So it's just the same. It's right in line with everything else that they've ever come out with. Okay? And we'll see what happens today and tomorrow and when the sales actually happen inside the actual game. Let me see what you guys are saying in chat. Okay, let's see. Going back up. Let's see. X Factor says, good idea for a show today. Good morning, everyone. What's going on, X Factor? Robert Jones says, look at making memes. Nate says, these comments in the is wild. Do said Ninja Gaiden. Have you ever seen or watched the gameplay? Shadows is beautiful and fun. I don't understand what do you mean about the comments? The things I'm reading? Or are you talking about people in chat? Travis says, I mean, and I'm not saying this, Mike, but the one is the huge franchise with nostalgia, and the other is a new IP. To be clear, an 83 new and an 83 old franchise, some people see them as different. You're talking about okay, I just brought up another one. Ghost of Tsushima is a brand new IP, got an 83. Praised as one of the best games ever. Starfield, brand new IP. Came out, got an 83. Tell me what the difference is, Travis. Tell me what the difference is of a brand new IP and a brand new IP, and then this is an old IP, and it has the same type of format as everything else. It's in the 80s. Eclipse says, I'll be playing it when it's free on Epic and the Game Pass, which everyone is at first. Yeah, it comes out. It comes out pretty fast. Water Bear says, PC is definitely having performance issues. Yeah, I haven't looked at any reviews, Water, but that 9-point difference from console, from Xbox to PC, that seems like there's a port problem there. Export is S tier. Question mark. Third, to be honest, this is one I had to be an AC game for the. Unfortunately, this is just more of the same, which is a bad thing for the AC fans, which myself, but for them, it's bad. Eclipse says, I mean, if people said that it needs to be cooked longer on console, and yeah, on PC, it's probably trash. Ron Slusher says, Dragon Age vibes. I don't really feel like the same vibe as Dragon Age. Ron, you're talking about publicly, like the way the public perceives it. I don't know. It's a little different, right? One was preaching to you, and one was like insulting a country, right? They're a little different, I guess. I guess I understand what you're saying, but I think the public persona is not the exact same. Let's see. Travis says, I like good games. This sounds like a good game. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. It's good. Now, somehow, the Bruce Almighty, it's good. Gaming Fire says, Assassin's Creed is a cute game. Ron Slusher says, Assassin's Creed Rivals needs to happen. What would that even be? Just all the assassins from all the games? That sounds pretty mid. Let's go on, Haley. I still have 2 AC games in my backlog. Roadkill says, yeah, but Hillary, you don't have AC game like the new one. People in chat, okay. Prosy says, it's fun. I enjoy it. What the fuck is wrong with the society when the score in the 80s is questionable? That's what I've been saying for so long, Prosy, right? That's what I've been saying for so long about when games are in the low 80s to mid 80s, they're like, nah, this game's a piece of shit. This is why we made the trash night. This is why one of our emotes is the trash night, because people defend bad games, and then also when numbers are in the 80s, they're like, it's a trash game. I'm like, what are we talking about? Travis says, I think I posted one before Ghost of Tsushima statement was made, but you got to remember an 83 on a Bethesda is bugged out. That was a 63. Just kidding. But yeah, an 83 is a good period. X Factor says, I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Out of the new style Assassin's Creed games, I felt like it was also playing a Wonder Woman game. And a lot of people, you're not the first one to say that, X Factor. A lot of people thought that the Wonder Woman game was going to be something along the lines of that. One was preaching, the other one was lying. Right. Hilly says, I agree with you about the 82/83, but I feel like Starfield got hurt for a couple of other reasons. The hype before the launch on Starfield was too high. Sure, but what Todd said about Starfield and what Ubisoft said about AC Shadows, saying it's the most accurate historical, right? That's the 1,000 planets. That's the 16 times the detail type of statement. You know what I mean? I've played every AC game, have Viking Boring Simulator multiple times. So yeah. See, I thought I would like Valhalla. I never played it. But I like the Viking like thing, like the whole myth about it and stuff. But at the same time, I'm just like, eh. And it was also came out like 5 years ago. I was watching Vikings at the time. I was like, I watched Vikings, and I saw the game come out. I was like, man, maybe I'll get that. And then no. Player says 80 Metacritic starting being bad because Xbox games were in the 80s, 85 range, so people need new punching bag. I guess, player. It's just silly to me, right? Like, there's two different conversations. If a game gets from the reviewers mid 80s, but then from the public, right, it gets a 70, they're like, oh, see, the game is shit. But if the people give it like an 80 and the reviewers give it a 70, it's the best game in the world, right? So it's like they don't care about the review score, the medium or media score. If it's, if this is the higher number and this is the lower number, it's a shit game. If this is a higher number or lower number and this is higher than that, then doesn't matter about this. So this doesn't really matter. It's about the player's score. But in people's talking points, they'll look at this as a thing. I take this number and merge them together, and that's what I get. That's what I get in movie reviews. That's what I get in TV show reviews. That's what I get in video game reviews. So if this is an 85 and this is an 80, it's an 83, right? If it's a 60 and an 80, it's a 70, right? Like, that's the way I look at it. Then on top of that, you look into what you like yourself, right? Maybe someone that reviewed the game didn't like RTSs. Maybe if someone that reviewed the game doesn't like open world games and they have to play the game, they're like, I don't really like this. So maybe they're not subconsciously making that effort to talk the game bad, but it's bad for them because they don't like that game, right? So I'm just showing, I'm going to show all these different reviews. They're going to say good things and bad things, and the person out there is going to look at it and say, I disagree or agree or disagree with them or disagree with me or whatever. But the whole thing is, look at more than one review. Check out what you want before you spend your money. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. There shouldn't be this like war and tell somebody that if the game is bad, that they're a shit person for liking a shit game, right? And because it's not popular. Because 10 million people didn't buy it and 3 million people did, that's a shit game. Business-wise, yeah, it's a shit game because they didn't make money on it, okay? But it could still be a good game. It's just not a game for the multiple people. And then you have another wrench that's thrown into the equation, which is developers opening their mouth and promoting something or throwing and being preachy about something or putting something in the game and then telling people they're sexist, racist, misogynistic. That also has variations of if the game's going to sell or not sell. Travis says, here's an easy version. If Travis says it's good, for Travis, it's good. If Travis says it's Elden Ring bad, for Travis, it's that bad. My option trumps others for what games I play. Travis says it in a completely ridiculous way. But yeah, your opinions are your opinions. And if you like something, then play it. You don't have to defend it, right? If you buy a game and you like the game, you don't have to defend that game to people that don't like that game, right? Ron Slusher says, I secretly like Redfall. Secret's out, Ron. It's no longer a secret. Windsor says, more than 30. I even heard yesterday people saying that it hit the 70s, and that's a concern. Last time I checked, I'm pretty sure that it was well above passing grade. So if you're in school, I guess you failed then. Right. All right. So let's get started. So let's look at the scores right now. Right? As it stands right now, before the reviewer scores come in from OpenCritic average is 81. Okay? Critics recommended 83%. Okay? You got a couple of reviews here. You got 8.5, 80 out of 100, 8.10, or 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5, 9 out of 10, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, and there's a bunch of other ones that are below, right? That's from OpenCritic. Metacritic, we have a 81 as well. User scores to be decided because it's coming out today. And Xbox has an 87, PlayStation has an 81, and PC has a 78. So where's that running now? That Xbox always has the worst version, and PlayStation always has the best version. Here it's like some upside down world here, right? PC's got a 78, meaning it's got to be unoptimized. Again, I'm not looking at any reviews. I'm just looking at the scores itself. PlayStation's got an 81. I don't know if that's on the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation 5 Pro, okay, mostly. And then the Xbox Series X, okay, is 87. I'm assuming this is just the PlayStation 5 because it says PlayStation 5, okay. So we'll see there. But there's the scores. 81 across the board for OpenCritic and also Metacritic. Let's go to, there's a lot of reviews here. I'm going to try to start off with a slow one, or a small one, I should say. That one's 18 minutes. That one's 30 minutes. That one is Jorraptor is 12 minutes. So let's start off with Jorraptor. He's got a 12-minute one here. Okay. In his thumbnail, I believe, or right down here, it says Assassin's Creed Shadows review after 80 hours. No story spoilers. So if you're worried about spoilers for a story, he has no spoiler stories. So he's got a 12-minute long video here, and let's see what he has to say.
Assassin's Creed Shadows is the best feeling Assassin's Creed at launch ever. The speed of Naoe, how she moves through the world, takes out enemies, you very quickly feel like a pro. It's really one of the key ingredients that makes Shadows so...
If you haven't followed Jorraptor, he's been playing this game in the early access, early preview, and now the final one as well.
Addicting, because that's the game's biggest strength, constantly teasing you with future activities that have more powerful unlocks tied to them, so you're always excited to keep playing. The game never feels overwhelming because all these singular objectives only cost a few minutes of your time and everything you do builds towards a more advanced shinobi or samurai. I love the player-first decisions, like not having stamina so you can run indefinitely and always feel strong during combat. It makes Shadows feel like a warm bath, a relaxing experience that you want to return to every day. And potentially for a long time, because so far I'm optimistic about the new post-launch systems that they have in place. Now this all does not mean that Shadows is perfect. Even with the 2 delays, I still run into bugs quite often, with one preventing me from progressing a certain quest line.
That's not good. If you have a broken game, obviously a lot of games have little glitches and stuff where you get stuck. But if there's something that stops you from progressing through a quest line, they got to fix that.
So I'm locked out of getting a new ally. But it's for me mostly that this game lacks some key elements that made the previous RPG games so memorable. But I will not be touching on everything because I want you to experience this game fresh. Also, no story spoilers in this video whatsoever, but I will at the end of the video share my overall non-spoiler thoughts on the narrative for if you are interested. Now, I want to make one thing clear, and that's that Assassin's Creed Shadows delivers on what Ubisoft promised. You already see it, the world is absolutely beautiful.
Visually, looking at what I'm looking at, it does look cool. Okay? Now, is it, again, as a white American, I don't know if that's accurate, okay, from their historic accuracy of Japan. If people have problems with it, it's not accurate, I understand. Me just looking at this going, it looks pretty fucking good.
Valhalla lacked that excitement of going to a new place for the first time because the world all felt very similar, but in Shadows you're constantly curious where your journey will take you next. The fact that they focused on a smaller part of Japan but made that closer to the real life size has paid off really well. While at first I was quite annoyed by the lack of an auto-run feature on your mount, I now actually appreciate this decision. It will let you be way more immersed in the world. It let me
That's a good choice, right? Just auto run, so you don't have to really think about it.
Appreciate the new wind tech even more that lets everything around you move. Leaves fly across the screen, forests feel dense now, you cannot see beyond the trees. It really feels like you're playing a next-gen Assassin's Creed.
That's cool.
And this was the case on all the platforms I tested on, by the way. I started through GeForce Now on PC and then switched to PS5 Pro. And I also played a bit on the regular PS5, both in the performance mode. And if you put the two...
Look at the difference.
Also played a bit on the regular PS5, both in the performance mode. And if you put the two side to side...
You can't even tell the difference. Hold on, I'm backing it up to the... Hold on, I'm trying to get back to the PlayStation 5 Pro. Because he's like right at the exact same spot. Give me a second. Patience. Patience. Come on, really? It's got to be almost there. I should have hit shift. Oh. There we go.
Ray tracing and light.
You can't really tell the difference. I'll be honest. You can't tell the difference. You got to like squint and be like, oh yeah. Hey, if you take the PlayStation 5 Pro off the top and the PlayStation 5 thing up the top, you won't know the goddamn difference.
On the Pro, you get a more realistic image, but again, if you're just playing on PS5, you will not notice this. The seasons are also really impressive.
He literally said it. You don't notice it.
With winter being the clear winner, it's kind of crazy how instead of just some regions always having snow, now the full map will turn white. This also means that you're sometimes slowed down by deep snow in areas where you could first sprint. You also cannot run on frozen ponds, the icicles on roofs can alert enemies, but those are really the only noticeable seasonal things that impact the moment-to-moment gameplay. But it is cool that the whole seasonal thing is also a crucial part.
Seasons only change what during the story? Like it doesn't just happen, right? Like you're playing through a game, and once you get to a certain part of the mission, like of the story, it'll probably change seasons.
Part of the gameplay loop, because when a season changes after 2.5 hours of playtime, the vendors will have restocked. So
okay. 2.5 hours. Okay, he said it.
So there are new items to check out. Your wanted status, if you had one, will be reset. New contracts and rumors will be available in your region. And you will also have new resources to spend to further improve your hideout. And I'm, by the way, really happy that the hideout is not a core part of the game like the settlement was in Valhalla. It will not take long before you unlock most of the main buildings for the core features and some of the team's rooms that give you some nice buffs.
I'll turn. Thank you very much. AC Shadows Game of the Year, or do I have to wait 18 months for the Game of the Year? I mean, I don't think it's Game of the Year. I don't think you have to wait 18 months either. But I haven't watched any reviews. We're how many minutes? We're 3 minutes in. I don't know if it's broke, buggy, or unfinished yet.
After that, you can mostly leave the hideout alone. Now,
Appreciate
of course,
the 17
if you
months,
want
man.
to go crazy with the new Sims-style systems, build your own little village, that is certainly possible. You will constantly find new
I'm sorry, wait a
hideout
minute.
prompts
Did you
while
just say that
exploring
there's building? You can build towns in this?
that give you some nice buffs. After that, you can mostly leave the hideout alone. Now, of course, if you want to go crazy with the new
your hideout.
Sims-style systems, build your own little village, that is certainly possible. You
That's the first I've seen of that. You can build your own hut?
will constantly find new hideout prompts while exploring, and you can buy them at vendors as well to put them anywhere you want in your hideout. Now, it is worth noting though that on console the frame rate can drop down significantly in the hideout, even when playing on the performance mode. I'm in particular curious how this is gonna work on the Series S, but on the Pro and the regular PS5 you will go down to like 30 or even lower in some instances. But because the hideout is more in the background this time, it does mean the whole growing the league feeling that they wanted to go for did not work for me. Most characters that will join your settlement are tied to completing side missions that I mostly did after completing the main story, so I had kind of an empty hideout for the majority of my playthrough. And by the way, if you liked the video so far, totally leave a like and a subscribe for way more Assassin's Creed
Yeah, Jorraptor's description is in the link is in the description down below as well.
Shadows content like this. But yeah, the only reason to visit your hideout after the initial upgrades is for the blacksmith to improve your gear and weapons. And it's totally the biggest improvement over Valhalla, because almost everything you find and loot in this game can have an impact on the way you play. I remember in Valhalla I was using the same armor set for the first 20 hours with no reason to switch. In Shadows I'm already making a bleed build very early on where I quickly apply the powerful status effect. Thanks to the random loot system in Shadows, you are constantly changing your look and there are some really cool pieces of equipment to find.
Wait, but I have a question. He said other games you use the same armor for like 20 hours. In this, he says I'm making a bleed build, but if you like the bleed build, you'll probably use that for 20 hours, wouldn't you? Am I confused by that?
But it's in particular exciting when you get a new legendary armor piece or weapon, because the perk on those can have a huge impact on your playstyle, like triggering a powerful slow time effect or instantly charging your bow. And it's cool that you can already get quite some legendary gear early on. You feel instantly rewarded. You know that, okay, if I take the time to kill all these powerful samurai daisho enemies in a military castle, I will get something useful.
I mean, that's exactly how Avowed is, right? The more you explore, the more shit you'll find. The more shit you find, the more things you can upgrade. The more OP you feel. So this seems like a good part of the game as well.
You can also once again stumble upon legendary chests while exploring, and I'm actually happy with the change to 2 armor pieces, because it really means that when you find gear, it's instantly satisfying.
Yep.
The addicting nature also comes from the new take on targets in this game. Instead of only having a list of the Order and Templar targets, you will now be going after many different factions. And I was surprised by how often my objective board would fill with a new round of targets, even very late into the game. And some of these are also narrative quests as well, instead of the just go and assassinate this enemy. And it's cool that these targets are not just...
My biggest thing about Assassin's Creed, and it's always been like this, the first 3-4 games, I was like super excited about the game, right? But then when I got to like the 4th game, and the game feels very repetitive. It's the same thing. It's almost, obviously football's football, like Madden. You can't change football. Football's the same, right? A halfback toss is a halfback toss, and that's what you do. This has got a little bit more variety to it, but it's the same thing. It's like, okay, talk to this person, take that person, go kill that person, right? And we talked about this like last year about fetch quests and what makes a fetch. Everything's a fetch quest, right? It doesn't matter if it's go kill this person, go pick this up, go to that place, whatever. They're all the same. They're just disguised. And what defines them differently to make them good or bad is the story content of it, right? So if the gameplay feels good, but it's repetitive and you see the same thing over and over, it gets boring. So then you need to put a little, little sprinkle on it, like decorate your coffee, decorate your cake. Don't just serve it up. You know what I mean? It's boring. So that's my problem with Assassin's Creed. It gets boring really fast for me because it seems repetitive.
defenseless NPCs that have bodyguards. No, you're very often fighting mini-bosses, and also here are rewarded with powerful loot, lots of XP and mastery points that you can spend on skills. Going after all the targets in the ring even is required for some of the late game unlocks. Again, everything feels rewarding in this game, and I love how they integrated the orange non-combat activities as well that give you access to brand new lines in a skill tree. So only
I have a little nitpick here. Just a smidgen of a nitpick. Okay, I think the weapon's cool, and throwing the weapon is cool, but it literally goes through. It goes through the wall.
activities as well.
Right? Like, she's hitting the person not only behind the wall, right? It's going through the wall, hitting the person behind the wall, hitting that person, the other person, where it would hit the wall and it would literally get stopped. I know I'm nitpicking, but
that give you access to brand new lines in a skill tree. So only leveling up is not enough this time. You also have to explore and look for these shrines, archery challenges, and other mini games.
Most walls were made of paper, so that's okay. Okay. So
Access to brand.
So show me where the wood beam, right there, right in front of you, Water. the giant wood beam. Okay, with the wood paneling. I don't think that's paper. Pretty sure that's not paper. But I know what you're saying.
They integrated the orange non-combat activities as well that give you access to brand new lines in a skill tree. So only leveling up is not enough this time. You also have to explore and look for these shrines, archery challenges, and other mini games in order to fully improve your character. Now sure, they're not the most exciting things individually, but to get...
Maybe it's paper wood. Yeah. Paper is made of wood, so wood would be as thin as paper. I got you.
Better and combined with the painting of animals, they do help put a larger emphasis on the non-combat activities.
That's right, Sir Gaby.
And it works really
Hey, it's paper wood, so it'd be much thinner wood than normal wood.
well with the peaceful landscapes of Japan. Now, of course, you will still be mostly sneaking or fighting in this game, and for me, constantly switching between Naue and Yasuke felt like the best way to go. It's really cool to see the contrast. Switching back to Naue feels like you're playing the game at 2 times speed after stomping your enemies with the heavier but tankier Yasuke. There are still some head-scratching moments where in an area with Yasuke exclusive missions, you get to a viewpoint that you cannot reach, so you are forced to switch to Naue. But you do actually learn to adapt and know that, okay, a large pagoda without the stairs can only be climbed with Naue, and I should probably do the lost pages with Naue as well, while the other things can mostly be reached by both characters. So yes, you can play most of the content with either Naue or Yasuke, but the system is far from perfect, because the two cannot fight alongside each other at the same time. So
I think it would have been cool if they changed up Assassin's Creed where you could play co-op with a friend. Do you know what I mean? I think that would have been next level.
sometimes you will show up at the final boss together, you get to pick who you play, and then the other character just disappears and comes back after the boss is defeated. Also, if you play one part of a main quest with Yasuke and then switch to Naue, the NPCs will not react to that. So they will just continue the conversation with Naue, even though you did the first part of the mission with Yasuke, and the NPC you're talking to right now never met Naue before. So this system...
Rumor is they're going to add co-op down the road, 30? Oh, okay, so not a complete game at launch, and then add stuff later. Gotcha.
System feels more like an evolution of what we saw with male and female Eivor, instead of something closer to Syndicate. But these awkward narrative moments are worth it, because being able to control two completely different characters does combat the biggest pitfall of these.
Not in the campaign, though, Altern. You could play a separate game mode, but you couldn't play it in the campaign, like the story mode.
Assassin's Creed RPGs, namely that they can become repetitive. Naue and Yasuke already have more depth individually if you compare them to the previous main game protagonists. So now we get to learn both of them, constantly unlock more powerful upgrades. It really keeps things fresh. That's why it hurts that there are only a handful of finishers. You will have seen all of them in the first few hours, so after 50, 60, 80 hours.
Hold on a second. What did you just say there?
it really keeps things fresh. That's why it hurts that there are only a handful of finishers. You will have seen all of them in the first few hours, so after 50, 60, 80 hours. I really hope they add more over time. Also, the enemy variety is not that great. I miss the unpredictable animals. They would have been great for exploring off the beaten path to make that more dangerous. Now it can often feel empty between points of interest. I do respect the amount of humanoid enemies, and they do save some archetypes for much later into the game, but the problem is that they are still just humans, and Ubisoft has not applied enough creative ideas to...
Hold on a second. Is he asking for, like, mythical creatures? Or is he asking for, like, fighting a bull? Or, like, a boar? What is he asking right now? Let me rewind this for a second.
Of humanoid enemies, and they do save some archetypes for much later into the game, but the problem is that they are still just humans, and Ubisoft has not applied enough creative ideas to make them feel different. And this in particular makes the boss fights, especially during the main story, very lackluster. Most bosses share moves with archetypes you've already fought countless of times before without adding any new interesting attacks that has you alter your playstyle. I switched to the expert difficulty halfway through the game.
All right, well, let me kind of break that down, right? If they are in the same region, they probably were all taught the same style of fighting. So that would be why they fight the same. But let me make a comparison here. This doesn't make it better than fighting 13 Brainiacs. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're fighting 13 Brainiacs and he's doing the exact same movesets every time you fight each Brainiac, it's just in a different format, and then you're fighting 10 different bosses inside of Assassin's Creed, and they all do the exact same type of maneuvers, but they just look different, that's the same, just disguised differently.
Game, and I still had no issue with any of these fights. This mostly thanks to the balance, with some abilities and moves being way stronger than others, and just the lack of surprising attacks from these bosses themselves. It made the fights way less memorable. Now maybe that changes post-launch. The Enemies Hub system they got in place makes me hopeful for what they have planned, as they now put way more effort into the weekly missions that you can do to earn some free rewards. You will actually see a glitch in the enemies when you are close and then have to take out a particular target or loot a specific chest. It's way...
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 13 Brainiacs.
Way better than the uninspired Reda missions that we had before. The game is also in a way better state than Valhalla was at launch, so they don't have to focus all their efforts on fixing the game first before pushing out new content. Although again, there are...
All right, hold on, let me rewind that a second there.
Is also in a way better state than Valhalla was at launch,
okay.
So they don't have to focus all their efforts on fixing the game first before pushing out new content. Although again, there are still quite some annoying bugs. Sometimes you cannot prone through a small area, or while prone you cannot leave, so you are stuck. Again, I cannot pick this ally up during this mission, so cannot complete the quest and unlock.
That's broke.
Her. Sometimes health bars are bugged.
Just don't get her knocked down.
Out, or enemies will not get into combat, or contracts are linked to killing a civilian who you cannot kill because then you get desynchronized. So still lots of work to be done, but it's certainly much better.
That's not what I want to hear. I don't want to hear there's lots of work to still be done. That if I was interested in this game, which I'm not, I myself right then and there would be like, I'll wait.
Better than in Valhalla. So now my spoiler-free thoughts on the narrative, but I get it if you don't want to hear anything. Then I will say goodbye, enjoy the game, and of course check out all the content that we have planned for you. So subscribe to not miss anything if you haven't already. So I really like the opening and the flashback scenes for both Naue and Yasuke. Their background story is great. I really love these missions, but it overall never really went anywhere for me during the main narrative. I also think they should not have done choices in the main campaign, because they, for one, don't matter, and it's even worse because they, for example, say, hey, do you want to kill this character? Then you say, okay, I want to kill this character, and then the game still does not kill the character. So there are...
Do you want to kill this character? Yes or no? I do want to kill this character. Okay, great. You can't kill the character, but I want to kill the character.
Multiple moments where they give the illusion of a choice, and that does not work for me. So I would not say that the narrative is bad. I love how they give more story and context to all the targets you go.
See, that's what I don't like. If you make a game to give me choice, then give me choice. And again, this is not just a Assassin's Creed issue. This is a gaming issue, right? If you put options in a game, then make my options feel like I actually have options, not the illusion of me that I have choice.
After, but I do think it's the weakest part for me for the game. Even though there are some great characters, it in the end,
The story is the weakest part. Is that what he just said?
narrative is bad. I love how they give more story and context to all the targets you go after, but I do think it's the weakest part for me for the game. Even though there are some great characters, it in the end did not deliver overall for me. Going back to a Valhalla comparison, I would say that the game does not have the lows of Valhalla for me in terms of story, but it also never reaches those highs, like the payoffs that you do get in Valhalla.
Parkour's always been so good in this game. The parkour's always been so good.
While Shadows overall, I think, improves upon almost everything that Valhalla did. So I would still say it's a really awesome game. But again, the narrative is the weakest part, I think. I'm curious to hear what you think. Of course, got more questions, drop them down below. Subscribe to not miss any of the Shadows content.
There's review one.
Awesome. You can check out a tips video if it's
Mostly positive. He had a couple of little things here and there to say. Check out Jorraptor's video, the description down below. The one part that he told that stuck out for me was it's still got a long way to go. That was huge, okay? Because everything else he said, obviously he's a big fan of Assassin's Creed, so he's going to look past a lot of stuff and enjoy what he enjoys, which is cool. But to say that it has still a long way to go, like, it launched. It launched. This is the day. It should be not a long way to go. It should be like right at the door. But we'll see. All right, let's see what you guys are saying here. Travis, no. Crowded says that even the good reviews gave the story a thumbs down. Waterbear says, where hopefully the combat is rewarding, it's worthy to play through for myself and Ubisoft 30. Look, I hope the game, if you like Assassin's Creed, I hope that it gives you that entertaining value past 15, 20 hours and doesn't feel repetitive. Annex says, how do most people get to play it already, but the ones who pre-order have to wait? I don't know. That's just the way it works. If you're a content creator, you usually get it like weeks early. The other people probably got it like a hard copy, and they know someone at the GameStop or something like that. If you order something from like Amazon or anything like that, unfortunately, you got to wait for the delivery. You know what I mean? All right, so we got Jorraptor. The next one I think we're going to watch is Legacy Gaming. They've blown up a couple of times over the years for some of the games. They had Lost Ark, they did, and they do a lot of games. So let's watch this. This is Legendary Gaming, or Legacy Gaming. Legacy Gaming. Do I have Legacy Gaming down below? I don't think I added them. I don't. Real quick, let me put them in the description down below, because I added them at the last second before we went live. All right. They're added. All right, let's get this going.
Well,
this is an
here we are again,
18-minute.
5 years after the launch of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I already know, regardless of what I'm going to say, half of you are going to outright hate this game, and the other half are going to love it. That's where we're at with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. But as you know, if you've been following this channel for any stretch of time, we've spent hundreds of hours playing and creating videos on this franchise.
We're going to do 1.25.
We have a genuine interest in this series, but as always,
if that's too fast for you guys, let me know, because it's like 19 minutes long. The other one's like 30 minutes long. The other one's another 30 minutes long.
We put every game we play through its paces, primarily focusing on the game's systems and gameplay, the things you guys have told us you care about the most. I am personally excited to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game set in a location fans of the series have been asking for since the beginning. But if you're expecting to hear about innovative gameplay, revolutionary systems, and a story worthy of record, well, you just don't know Ubisoft.
Have your expectations basically be set. Did we just have a server shift on YouTube here?
So here's the headline. Assassin's Creed Shadows manages to build on the foundation from Valhalla, stripping away some of the things players didn't like and delivering a game I think many will enjoy. It is a familiar experience, which is both good and bad, and some of the big changes, like the introduction of a secondary, wildly different protagonist, add new wrinkles to an otherwise formulaic approach that feels expansive yet predictable. The main storyline feels more grounded, with more of an emphasis on real people undergoing real struggles and less on the magic and mysticism that sometimes dominated the previous games. Bloat is still a concern, but as always, what you put in is what you get out, and if you're someone that likes to 100% these types of games, yeah, it's gonna be a grind. That's not going to sit well with everyone, but as always, optional.
Yeah, but options. I think he's about to say it, right? Options are good. If you're a person that likes to do the 100% thing and play the game for 60, 80, 100 hours, then that's good for those people. If you're a person that just wants to run through the game and just do the mainline story quests and then be done with it and put it down, I mean, I don't get it that personally myself. Like, when I get a game, I like to dive in and play like everything that game has to offer because someone made it and I want to play it.
Content is just that, optional. All in all, this is a safe step up from Valhalla, with little in the way of innovation, more tweaking around the edges to.
Why do they keep comparing it to Valhalla and not everything else? Right? We've had multiple Assassin's Creed from Valhalla to now. Why does everyone always bring up Valhalla with this?
Address some of the biggest concerns from the previous game. Now, I'll come back to that word formulaic in just a bit, because I think it's at the heart of Assassin's Creed's success and its failure. But first, let's ground ourselves in the game. Assassin's Creed Shadows takes the series to feudal Japan during a time where war.
That was the last main entry? What was Origins, Odyssey? What the hell was the other one? Those weren't main entries? Hold on a second. What was the last? Oh, okay. Okay, so Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla. Got it. 17, 18, 20. Then 23. They missed 3 years. Valhalla lasted for 3 years. Then they had Mirage. Now they have Shadows. Got it. Okay. That makes sense now. I was like, why do they keep comparing it to Valhalla? Because in my head, Valhalla came out 5 years ago. So in my head, I was like, isn't there more Assassin's Creed games that came out? Understand. Got it now.
Warmongering daimyo fought for control no matter the cost. You play as both Nawe, a shinobi from the Iga clan, and Yasuke, a samurai turned peacekeeper after a critical point in the game's story. The game gives you near complete control over who you play at any point during your adventure, aside from a few character-specific quests, and I think that's important to say up front because I've seen a lot of angst around the dual protagonist approach. They are strikingly different characters from a story and gameplay perspective, with Nawe being your traditional assassin archetype that uses her agility.
If I did play this game, I would probably play 100% her. I like the sneakiness. I like being stealthy. I don't like to be loud and obnoxious coming through the door and kicking it in. At least in this type of game. In Assassin's Creed game, I want to be an assassin.
To climb walls, drop down for aerial assassinations, and everything you'd expect from a mainline AC hero. On the other hand, Yasuke introduces something completely different, a combat-forward character that has very little stealth capabilities and instead relies on his strength and training as a samurai to overpower his enemies. Each of the main characters has access to a different set of weapons, as well as different mastery trees, which help them feel distinctly different, and who you choose to play throughout 99% of the game is entirely up to you. I'll tell you from my experience, I spent about 3/4.
Water says, I'm coming in like the Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah, he kicks in the door and just starts slaughtering people. Yeah, that's not my style when I play assassin games.
Of my time on Nawe because I wanted a true Assassin's Creed experience, but that didn't stop me from busting out Yasuke a time or two just so I could carve a path through my enemies.
That's not what they said, House. They said if you wanted to play if you wanted to play with one character the entire way through the story, they say you can do that. That's what the devs said in an article that we read like a couple of months ago.
Maybe I'm alone here, but I actually like the change, and I think it's a smart way to break up the archetypes, especially after there was so much discourse around Eivor and his supernatural abilities that made him practically godlike. The pivot away means you have two characters who both have clear strengths, but also clear weaknesses, and I think that helps keep the gameplay grounded for the majority of the experience.
It says you can't? You can't play as one person? You have to switch it up? So are you telling me the devs lied?
Big concerns going into the game was how Ubisoft would handle storytelling through the eyes of two protagonists, but it's very clear that Nawe is the lead, with Yasuke taking a slightly less important role. Their interactions aren't as heavy-handed as I thought they might be, and while they are allies, they hold tight to their values, which are forged by their pasts.
There's definitely parts of the game that aren't accessible to both characters. If it's a dude getting pissy, someone. Oh, see, that's not. I could have sworn they said you could play either of the characters through the whole story. I could have sworn they said that back last year, like summertime.
It's actually a pretty cool, if not predictable, dynamic, with Nawe pushing back against oppression and corruption, and Yasuke being the loyal and steadfast samurai. In addition to
That's
that,
not one of the
how
ones
the
we're
team
watching
manages
today,
to
though,
use
Crowder.
these characters to further the Assassins and Templar meta stories is also pretty interesting, but of course, no spoilers. But I will say that's certainly something worth checking out if the overarching Assassin's Creed story is something you've followed throughout the years. Besides the two protagonists, there are a lot of tweaks to familiar systems that I think play out in mostly a positive way. I don't think we're all going to agree on these, but from where I sit, one of the biggest, most positive changes was the removal of an eagle. Now, I get it, this is an iconic element of Assassin's Creed, but I think we can also agree that it made the game too simple. In previous games, whenever you wanted to track enemy positions, mark points of interest, or get the layout of an area, you simply hit a button and all of that information would be at your fingertips. It was overpowered, not in the traditional sense, but because we didn't actually have to work for the information. Shadows changes by completely removing the eagle. Nawe still has the ability to sense enemies and mark them, but only as she's actively exploring the world. This feels far more organic, and while some might say Eagle Vision is still cheap, it feels better than instant.
Kudapapa says 30. You can probably play the entire campaign with one person, but not 100%. I'm sorry. I'm going to read that again. You can probably play the entire campaign with one person, but not 100%. Not 100% of the game, but the campaign you can play. Is that what you're saying? He just said you can't play 99% with whoever you want.
This feels far more organic, and while some might say Eagle Vision is still cheap, it feels better than instantly marking everything from the sky. The removal of the eagle also plays a huge factor when it comes
Did he say that? Did I miss that because I was reading?
removing the eagle. Nawe still has the ability to sense enemies and mark them, but only as she's actively exploring the world. This feels far more organic, and while some might say Eagle Vision is still cheap, it feels better than instantly marking everything from the sky. The removal of the eagle also plays a huge factor when it comes to exploring a restricted section, something, as I'm sure you all know, you will do constantly throughout any Assassin's Creed game. Without the eagle, you're forced to find vantage points, mapping out the area
Well, that's the way it should be. I think the eagle would be cheesy.
in your head while also actively exploring it. This creates a dynamic we haven't seen in quite some time in Assassin's Creed, and I found that it actually helped elevate the stealth gameplay.
FNT, we're gonna be watching ACG's video in a little bit.
The lack of instant information forces you to slow down and work through the process, which feels more akin to the Assassin's Creed games of old, while still maintaining some of the player comforts we've grown accustomed to, like the ability to still tag enemies once you see them. The introduction of Nawe's grapple hook is also the perfect element to layer on top of the stealth gameplay and fits like a glove with the theme of the game. Because of Japan's architecture, it's not always possible to run full tilt up a vertical wall, and that's where the grapple becomes essential.
That's what I was thinking. 100% was like, if you have to switch, that's not 100%.
Nawe can use this to climb up walls or swing between locations. It's not as dynamic as some other games, but it's functional, unlocking new ways to explore and move around the world. I honestly underestimated how essential this item would be, and by the end of the game, I can comfortably say that it became just as important to
I mean, I like that you can go basically anywhere you want.
my maneuverability as running and climbing. Stealth overall is going to feel familiar to anyone who's played any of the modern Assassin's Creed games, because it's essentially the same system from Valhalla. Things are gated a little differently, with Nawe's masteries opening up more advanced techniques like double assassinations, but the fundamentals are identical. What I actually think lends itself best to the stealth is the world itself. The Japan the team has created feels much denser than previous Assassin's Creed games, and I mean that for both structures and environmental assets. In Valhalla, when I was stealthing in, it often felt like there were only a few real options to get around an area, and that was largely due to the open layout of the world. It feels completely different in Shadows, especially in the cities where buildings are practically on top of each other, creating a network of walls, roofs, and environmental elements you can interact with in a sequence. At ground level, there's also a ton of vegetation.
I always love that. You jump on somebody and they're like, what the hell?
that provides you additional stealth options. Shadows and the new prone system supposedly add even more depth to this stealth gameplay, but I never found that I really utilized either. Bottom line, the stealth is unsurprisingly similar from previous games, but the changes to the world design lend itself much better to the system overall. Simply put, the ceiling remains the same, but the floor has been raised. One thing that's different about Assassin's Creed Shadows is the way the game approaches questing and the overall story. The game features a sprawling objectives menu that continually expands as you meet key NPCs.
I think this is cool. I think the more stuff you can go in, like obviously if you like Assassin's Creed and they're giving you more stuff and more people to assassinate, this is bad. This is good. You know what I mean? This is a good section they've added.
And discover more about assassination targets in each region. Your main objective is to find and assassinate the Shimbakfu, a mysterious order of Japan's elite, pulling the strings and manipulating the population. But as you play through the game, entire side stories will reveal themselves. In one instance, you have to hunt down a group of corrupt...
Hopefully the story for that type of stuff is good. It's not just, go kill this guy, thanks.
Icon, who are terrorizing locals in specific regions. Another side story has Yasuke track down and duel masters of different forms of samurai combat. These act as filler content, sure, but they also weave in additional storylines and provide experience, weapons, and armor that can help you bridge the gap between the main quests. One thing I did really enjoy was the way the game approached questing overall. Instead of a big quest log where you check everything off a list, you use that sprawling objectives menu to find quests associated with specific individuals or targets.
Okay.
Then you have to locate the quest objective by either utilizing your scouts to scan areas of the map, or find the target yourself using the observe mode once you reach the general area. This helps make questing feel less, go here, do that.
If that's a ninja up on the rock, right? If that is a samurai fighter that you're about to assassinate, and she doesn't know that you're there, she deserves to die. Yeah, if she's on a rock and you're in an open fucking field and you're sneaking up on her, she deserves to die.
And a bit more organic. There are some genuine moments of frustration where the clues don't really help you find the objective, or you end up searching an area for far longer than you should just to find your target, but it's still better than constantly being handheld through the entire game. Outside of the objective board, there are traditional side quests, and these play out exactly like they did in Valhalla. Talk to an NPC or witness something in the world and then complete the objective, which is often nearby. There's nothing too surprising here, but this is where the team gets a little loose with the storytelling, dialing up either the humor or the drama just a few notches more than you'd expect. Then there's the rest of the side activities, and once again, Ubisoft beats us over the head with a million little things to do. I wouldn't usually mind this, because all of it is optional, but the difference with Shadows is that these side activities are directly tied to the tier of mastery skills you have access to, limiting what techniques you can use for both Nawe and Yasuke. In my opinion, this is incredibly limiting for a player, because it forces me to complete dozens of, let's say it, pointless side activities so I can access better abilities for...
Hold on a second. I understand what he's saying. But what's the difference if I go and tell you, hey, go do these 3 missions, right? And at the end of those 3 missions, you're rewarded a thing, and then you can use that thing to upgrade your gear or to level up your character, right? Or if I tell you, hey, do this mini game and do this thing, and then it opens up the access for you to get the... You see what I'm saying? It's the same. It's the exact same. It's just one's disguising it better than the other.
Use for both Nawe and Yasuke. In my opinion, this is incredibly limiting for a player because it forces me to complete dozens of, let's say it, pointless side activities so I can access better...
Are they pointless, though? Are they pointless, or are they unlocking something? I'm confused by that statement. If you need to unlock something here, and you need to go do this thing, is it pointless? The definition of pointless means it does nothing. If it does nothing, then don't worry about it. Right?
Techniques you can use for both Nawe and Yasuke. In my opinion, this is incredibly limiting for a player because it forces me to complete dozens of, let's say it, pointless side activities so I can access better abilities for combat. Activities such as finding scrolls at a lost temple, praying at shrines, meditating with Nawe, running through forms with Yasuke. It is incredibly simple, not at all satisfying, and to directly tie that to progression doesn't feel great.
Okay. If it doesn't feel satisfying, that's fine, but it's not pointless if it's unlocking stuff for you to do.
To put it into perspective, I completed the main portion of the game only reaching rank 3 knowledge, and that's because I forced myself to stop for an entire night to grind up the knowledge points needed to expand my mastery, which doesn't feel good. Luckily, you don't really need to max out your mastery to be proficient in combat, but without all of the skills and techniques available in each tree, there's a simplicity to the fighting that becomes incredibly redundant. Unless you take the time to grind out and unlock every tier of mastery, you're going to go into a lot of combat situations with just 1 or 2 active abilities.
But then that means they're not pointless. If I decide I want to be good with the sword or the staff, and I have to go train with the staff and then do the staff stuff, then I unlock the staff. So then if I find a staff in the battle, then I can unlock more stuff, meaning I have more abilities to use in my arsenal, then that wouldn't be pointless.
And that certainly diminishes the action. Just like stealth, the combat feels more or less the same as it did in Valhalla, with just a few twists. For one, new flurry attacks telegraphed by blue glowing weapons require you to dodge or parry multiple successive blows before an enemy becomes vulnerable. Standard white attacks can be parried, and red ones of course have to be dodged. Outside of that, there are new posture attacks, which are slightly more powerful forms of your light and heavy attacks that allow you to guard break, which gives you the option for proactive offense, which I prefer over the wait and parry techniques, which is synonymous with this game. I should point out that Yasuke's gameplay is entirely based around combat and offense. I genuinely had fun slinging around his naginata and kanabo, which can absolutely devastate enemies, and while certainly
I like the feel that it looks like. Again, I haven't played the game, but it definitely looks much different than her gameplay style, right? He looks brutal. Like, it feels like, and I don't know if you guys are playing on PlayStation, let me know how that works out with the controller. Like, when you hit, if it feels sluggish, if it feels more impactful. You know, like when you drive a car in a game and it has some weight to it. Let me know when you guys play on the PlayStation with the controller if it makes you feel like it's more powerful, like he's more sluggish, and if you feel the impact.
Not how I spent a majority of my playthrough. I did enjoy the simple fun Yasuke offered, running into areas and leaving a trail of bodies in my wake. Each of the main characters has access to a small assortment of weapons, with Nawe having access to the katana, kusarigama, and tanto, while Yasuke has a slightly larger arsenal featuring the long katana, naginata, kanabo, teppo, and bow. There is a metric ton of loot, including legendary gear, that you can obtain during almost every leg of the journey, and I was actually kind of surprised by that. Legendary gear features a legendary perk, but also has an engraving slot that you can use to make the weapon even better. Same goes for the armor and accessories. Unlike Valhalla, you only have 5 total gear slots, 2 weapons, head and body armor, and an accessory. I like the simplified equipment slots, but the sheer volume of gear you can obtain is actually a disservice to the game because you're so desensitized to the thrill of loot that rush of dopamine you would otherwise get whenever you loot something actually wanes away. That being said,
Well, that's any game. That's any game. Look, I'm playing Avowed right now. I'm 48 hours into Avowed. Okay, I've opened hundreds of chests. It gets old. Opening chests and doing the exact same thing, it does get monotonous over time.
Some of the weapon animations, specifically the executions, are absolutely brutal, which I think a lot of players are going to enjoy. I mentioned some of the big changes to the game earlier in the headline, and there's one thing in particular I wanted to call out: the hideout. This is similar to the settlement in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but also not at the same time. Ubisoft did a solid job with this system, giving players the chance to create a fully customizable base, mixing essential buildings that provide upgrades.
But why? Right? He was talking, and again, I don't know, I'm asking a question, right? He was talking about unlocking certain things which felt pointless. This base system, again, this is coming from a person that never played Valhalla, and now I'm looking at this going, why is this in this game? Is there a point to it?
Upgrades and progression with cosmetics that you can unlock and place around your hideout. Personally, I didn't spend a lot of time placing trees and creating cozy corners of my base, but I can see certain players loving this aspect of the game, especially because there, by my account, seem to be a lot of things players can find and unlock just by playing the game. This feels way better than the themed items that were...
Now I have another question. He just said it's cool because you're unlocking stuff while just playing the game. If I'm unlocking stuff in the other segment he just did about getting a staff or getting a sword or being more proficient in stuff, you're just doing that as you're playing the game. I'm confused on this. Uh-oh, this is the microtransaction store?
Present in Valhalla.
Jorraptor didn't bring up the microtransaction store. There's a microtransaction store?
Find and unlock just by playing the game. This feels way better than the themed items that were present in Valhalla that could only be placed at very strategic parts of the settlement. Now you have almost complete control over the placement of entire buildings, rooms, and aesthetic items, and it feels good. You'll find these in the highest density in various wealth areas, locations guarded by enemies and filled with loot. Smaller resources can be picked up by Nawe and Yasuke, but larger pallets of resources can be tagged for your scouts to retrieve at the end of a season. Oh yeah, the game has dynamic seasons now, which completely changed the visual aesthetic of the world, which is pretty awesome. Those 3 resources are the key to upgrading your various hideout progression rooms and unlocking additional rooms and structures.
The world changed in Suicide Squad. That got old really quick.
To be placed around your base.
Tornadoes happen in Battlefield 2076. Okay? We all know it's 2042, but, right? That gets old real fast.
It's another example of something you really have to actively focus on if you want to take full advantage of everything the system has to offer. One thing I will say is a huge plus, at least in my eyes, is the lack of having to go back to your hideout every 5 minutes to advance the main quest. Occasionally, you'll need to go back there to use the forge and upgrade your gear, but for the most part, the game...
Right, Saint? So decorating is meaningful and upgrading is pointless. I need to get better drugs. I'm confused. I'm confused on this take.
Keeps you out in the world, not playing base manager, and that's a huge change from the previous game that saw almost every activity start and end at your settlement. So far, sounds like Assassin's Creed, right? Base formula of the game hasn't changed a whole lot, and while they're certainly tweaking around the edges, in my opinion, the game has taken a predictable and relatively safe step in the right direction. There is still a glaring issue with this game, and it's steeped in Ubisoft theory at this point, and it's the formulaic approach to game design. From the buildings and enemies to the loot and questing, everything feels systematic, and that's often why people refer to Ubisoft open world games as check-the-box experiences.
Yeah, I get
Things that would be enjoyable in smaller doses become boondoggles because you have to do them a dozen plus times, and when you multiply that by however many systems that follow that same ideological design, there is a tediousness to Assassin's Creed Shadows that runs deeper than the game itself. Look, we all know this is Ubisoft's last bastion of hope for the company, and there's already rumors about the team selling off Assassin's Creed to a company like Tencent, which is saying a whole lot. That being said, the setting has been long desired by fans, and the gameplay is familiar, and in some cases, it is better. That's a formula for Assassin's Creed success, but it doesn't take away from the fact that there are elements of the game Ubisoft continues to recycle.
That was pretty brutal right there.
Without ever taking any
The video, not what he was saying.
risks. That's what's missing from Assassin's Creed Shadows: innovation. Having a second protagonist doesn't accomplish that. While I do enjoy Yasuke's gameplay, I want to see the company take some risks. Everything can be anticipated, and I mean
They did take a risk. They took a risk. They put a realistic character in a game in a historic setting and didn't do any of those things.
everything from the story to the quest design to the loot you receive. It is high time for Ubisoft to take this series in a new direction, and I get it. That is terrifying for a publicly traded company. But quite honestly, I don't give a hoot about that, because as the players that continue to support these games, we should demand better. Let me be clear. I had a good time playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. It is a sound game with some engaging, albeit repetitive systems. I can tell you though, point blank, there will be creators trying to rage bait the game's demise, but as always, you don't care about that stuff, and instead, choose to focus on the gameplay and the systems, the things that matter to you guys. The issues I'm talking about run deeper, and I hope the team addresses them at some point, especially with games like Assassin's Creed Codename Hex on the horizon, which, if you believe the marketing, is pushing the game in a completely new direction. Ubisoft, much like Activision, EA, and other massive AAA companies, needs to get back to what made them giants in the first place: innovation and new ideas. So there you have it, guys. My full thoughts on Assassin's Creed Shadows, after beating the game and exploring pretty much everything the game has to offer. If you have any questions about the game, I'll be monitoring the comments in the first...
I get that he said something. He didn't bring up... No one's brought up the voice acting in the 2 reviews that we've had so far. No one's brought up the voice acting, or they talk about the story. He didn't really talk about the story. He just said it's, the AC recipe. Jorraptor said the story was pretty lackluster. No one's brought up any kind of dialogue, voice acting. Didn't go too deep into the story as far as it's good or bad. They just say it's AC. All right, so that's that. We got Legacy. We did Jorraptor. All right, we have ACG, and we have Morsimal. Morsimal Gaming. That one is 30 minutes long, and ACG is 30 minutes long. What time is it? 11 o'clock? Yeah, we could do both. All right, let's go with... Sarge says, I have a few questions. Go ahead, Sarge. Yes, go ahead. What is your No, you don't have to do the base building. I just think it's funny that Nate, when he said that it's pointless to do the thing to unlock things in the skill tree, he said it's pointless. But then was like, yeah, I really like the house building. But there's no point to that, right? Is there a point to have a base? What does it do for you? I think ACG and Fairlex talk about the voice acting. They said it's fine. Nothing insane, okay? Legacy said he liked the women's voice acting. ACG said he didn't. I thought the point was to have fun, Sarge says. All right, here's our third one. All the links are in the description down below. This is review number 3.
What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my review of Assassin's Creed Shadows.
I think we might bring him up to 1.25.
The next entry, of course, into the Assassin's Creed franchise, this time bringing us to feudal Japan with our dual protagonists. But before we dive into all that, some qualifiers and everything. Now, normally this is where I would tell you about the 100% reviews, but obviously that's not what this is, so I can spare you much of that. But essentially, I'm able to bring you this review because I was provided a review key a couple weeks ago towards the beginning of March to check this game out. Now, the sort of catch there is that the review keys were provided via Ubisoft Connect. So even though this game is coming to Steam, that is not the platform I played it on for this review. Now, usually that would be fine. I would just 100% it on Ubisoft Connect the way I did with Star Wars Outlaws, actually, and show that instead. But the thing is, in the sort of pre-release version of the game for these review keys that they've sent out, neither the challenges or the achievements for the game were in place, so I'm not bothering to label it that way. Now, this will also affect a couple of other things. For instance, the game is supposed to be verified on Steam Deck, but I didn't really test that for myself because, well, you can get Ubisoft Connect working via the desktop mode and try to do things that way. That's not really the experience most people are going to have with that. So I decided to hold off on that and, not jump through a bunch of hoops to get an ultimately different experience than the people playing it on Steam Deck will likely have via its native Steam release. Just as a few...
We're just watching reviews to show people that if they want to get the game or not get the game, like, this is what we're doing. We're watching a couple different reviews, not the mainstream media, just other content creators that have put the time into the game, get their thoughts, take the good, take the bad.
Examples. Now, bringing it back to the game itself, I personally have not played the Assassin's Creed franchise in quite some time, since Assassin's Creed 2, in fact, but after taking a...
Krebsy says, new article, title have me laughing, Japan's Prime Minister will not tolerate the shrine destruction in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and Japanese government addresses Assassin's Creed Shadows controversy. There you go.
Look at the game via a remote preview and some, just requests from the viewers, really, I decided I would go ahead and review this one and jump back into the franchise. And unfortunately, for the game, I guess, I have to say that I don't recommend this one. I jumped back in...
We're 2 minutes in, and he said I don't recommend this one. Hold on a second. Let me back up here.
Fortunately, for the game, I guess, I have to say that I don't recommend this one. I jumped back and forth between giving it a buy on sale or a do not recommend after having a pretty middling time with most of the game, but then ultimately I ran into some significant technical issues right at the sort of end of the run, like the last 3 to 4 hours, give or take, and for me that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in this case. And then when you combine that with the microtransactions, other technical issues I had, half-hearted gameplay and progression systems, and a story that wasn't really wowing me, over the course of this review I think you'll see why I ultimately gave it a do not recommend. Now, that's not to say it's all bad, however. There is a few things in this game I liked. For instance, Naue as a character, our actual sort of assassin character, both her sort of personal story alongside her gameplay actually I think fits the narrative and what they were going with much more aptly than, say, Yasuke's, and that combined with the other addition of like the scout system, which gives you a way of clearing map markers and objectives without just, following actual quest markers, was pretty neat stuff. But ultimately, it's not enough to make up for all the things I just don't like about this. So let's dive into that with perhaps the most egregious thing, which is the microtransactions. Now, microtransactions are nothing new to the franchise from what
He's the first person to really bring up the microtransactions out of the 3 that we watched. Legacy Gaming brought it up for a blink of an eye, so...
I know, but while I initially thought this would just be cosmetic...
I know what someone's going to say. Well, this was in Valhalla and all the other ones, so I don't know why they're upset about it.
Skins. Digging a little deeper into the microtransaction store that they have in place here, there's very clearly pay to progress type stuff, And in fact, in one case, you can even buy a pack that just like marks everything on the map for you, which is worth a mention.
Hey, wait, you could buy something just shows everything on the map for you? Man, where was that when the last guy talked about it, where it was pointless to do stuff in the game? If you could just purchase everything where everything is in the game, that's pretty simplistic, isn't it?
Because the proverbial towers that are here don't actually mark absolutely everything. You can also buy things like resources to upgrade your hideout, which are otherwise kind of annoying to collect, and you can even just straight up buy gold, or the currency of the day, Mon, which just doesn't make any sense, seeing as you really don't need it much for the actual in-game portion anyway. But the microtransactions also sort of pull back to what they are calling the Animus system. So this is like a organizational tool in some sense, in that it will allow you to launch all of the different Assassin's Creed games that you have, that you own, I suppose. But this is where you'll also access things like the store and the other part of this, which is the exchange and then the Shadows projects. The exchange, you can use keys that you get from actually playing the game to exchange for various little items and things, not all that dissimilar from the way Ubisoft has done their challenges in the past. And then there's the projects. So the Shadows projects are, I guess, akin to something like a battle pass almost, but they seem to be free, at least.
This is a single player game. It's a single player game. Nate says you don't have to buy that stuff. Yeah, I get that, Nate, but it's a single player game, man.
At the time of this video, but basically by completing little missions that you'll get in the game world itself, you'll earn progress towards these projects, and then you'll earn rewards for having done so. And honestly, this just seems like another way to monetize a game that seems to be unnecessarily monetized with microtransactions to begin with, considering the game is $70. Now, personally, I don't like seeing microtransactions in a single-player game at all, but I admit that purely cosmetic stuff is whatever to me for the most part. Now, I will say that when you start including things like utility, etc., while it is theoretically possible to add those things in a way that is sort of optional and not infringing upon the game in any way, I also find that it provides a financial incentive to game developers to then slow or create progress centered around being so slow that you would want to pay to speed those things up in the way that we see with like...
If someone just comes in right now and says, I thought you guys were watching Assassin's Creed reviews. We are. But meanwhile, we're playing SimCity here.
The resources in this game, so not a fan of any of that, frankly. And then from there, let's get into the technical side of things. So some of the technical problems I experienced, namely a fair few of the crashes, of which there were quite a few, probably at least a dozen or so over the course of like 70 or 80 hours with this, those were related to a driver problem. You see, a thing about playing review copies is that, well, sometimes the drivers you have will be fine, other times they are not up to date with what the game is expected to run on when it launches, which was the case here, and NVIDIA had not released the driver for this, and I had not received that driver through the game developer themselves, which sometimes is a thing. And as such, the only driver I had available for my 4090 at the time just seemed to not be compatible with the game, and this would cause a crash every so often. I obviously hope that gets fixed.
You see this right here? I think the entire game like this would have been badass. In this style, that would be different
with the launch, but it's very annoying for me personally. That said, it was not the only issue I ran into, but the rest were comparatively minor right up until I got to the end of the game, in which I came close to something that I would consider game-breaking. But on the smaller side of things, there's a lot of visual stuff, I think, things like clipping and whatnot or whatever, but you would get stuck on terrain a lot. Unsurprisingly, the landscape of Japan can be a little extreme, especially when you're coming down a mountain, and it wasn't unheard of then to get stuck on some of that terrain that clearly you're not necessarily meant to be walking through much. And while that's fine, it would also occasionally just happen while you were climbing things, and in certain places it seemed like the game just didn't know quite where to put you, per se. Now, on the much more problematic side of things, towards the end of the game, after completing a certain main story cutscene, so to speak, immediately after that, the game would no longer let me sprint, and it would no longer let me save. Like, clearly what was happening is my character was getting stuck.
Now, he had a review copy. Now, he did say this, like, when you get review copies and stuff like this happens. I hope this doesn't happen when it launches today and people start playing the game and they have this problem.
In some sort of combat state or something like that, because I could still do everything else, even fast travel. But the second I did this cutscene, no matter what else happened around it, I could no longer sprint, and the game would not let me save anymore. And I was able to ascertain that this cutscene was doing it because I could no longer save. It just kept kicking me back to the autosave right before that cutscene, during which I could totally move around normally and save or whatever. And then the second I went through that cutscene, the game wouldn't even autosave after this. And I'm not sure why my character couldn't sprint, but it made doing the last few hours of what I needed to get done for this review painful, to be honest. And in any other context outside of doing a review, I probably would have just stopped playing there. So at least for me, I would describe the technical state of this one as not great, frankly. Now, luckily, everything from The performance side of things was mostly okay. Every once in a while, the game would freeze for a couple of seconds, which I'm not sure if that was related to the driver issue I was having or if it was its own standalone thing, so to speak. But moving on a little bit, let's next talk difficulty, because when we actually jump into the game, you do have a few options gameplay-wise, including difficulty, guided exploration, choices you can make, that kind of thing. So on the difficulty side of things, most of what this affects is obviously like how quickly enemies will detect you, the damage they deal, and how they can react to you, the player. Basically saying,
you will have to use a network of investigation clues to find your objectives and progress in your venture. I have a question. They have an option in the thing to guided exploration, and then they also sell you a microtransaction to give you all the places where everything is. Got it.
as the difficulty goes up, enemies are smarter and faster, basically. Now, the catch there is there's only one difficulty above normal, and on normal and below, everything is laughably easy, to be honest. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think Assassin's Creed is really the type of game that people are going into expecting some hardcore challenge, but I will say that in a game where you have all of these sort of pseudo-RPG elements like gear and stats and everything, it just seems to mostly be pointless, because what really matters is just what level your character is alongside what your masteries are, which are your skill trees, basically. But if you're having trouble for whatever reason, there are a variety of difficulties you can adjust, and then the extra stuff like guided exploration allows you to either turn off completely the quest markers and use the scouts and stuff instead as the game is intended, or if you just want the quest markers, you can turn that on straight away. You can also turn on canon mode, which forces the characters to make specific actions instead of getting to make choices here and there, though in my experience with this game, the choices don't ever seem to have any consequences, actually, so most of those don't really matter. The only one that seems to make much of a difference is when you are recruiting certain members for your hideout, which we'll get to. You do have the option to turn those people away, which would then give you less people at your hideout and stuff, which seems to be the only substantial consequence to any decision you could make, which is as good a time as any to talk a little bit about the story. Now, obviously, we're a couple days away from the game's release, so, a spoiler warning is probably worth a mention at the start of this section. I'm not going to be spoiling much, and truth be told, I don't think there's much story in this game to spoil, but nonetheless, if you don't want to hear any of that and go into a blind, obviously skip this section. But ultimately, the story of Assassin's Creed Shadows is the story of Naue and Yasuke and their fight against a cabal of people set around feudal Japan, specifically in the late 1500s. Straight away, I will mention that this period of Japan's history has actually been seen in video games pretty frequently, specifically around...
Yeah, we know the story. It's like watching Spider-Man again and telling the origin story of Spider-Man again.
Life and death of Oda Nobunaga. Now, probably worth a mention, though, that while this game does use historical events to add context and a sort of timeline to things, none of it is really aiming to be historically accurate either. Nonetheless, though, we're going to play as these two dual protagonists.
That's not what they said. It's not what they said. They said historically accurate.
Across a tumultuous time in Japan's history is ultimately what it comes down to, and this sees us trying to largely reacquire a box that is stolen from Naue's father, who's clearly part of a secretive sect himself, which is the Assassin Brotherhood, after it is stolen by this cabal of ne'er-do-wells seeking to influence Japan, of course, and much of the story is basically just tracking those people down and assassinating them, if you'd believe it. But a couple of other notes. For one, you...
I like how you said that, assassinating, if you believe that. Yeah, it's called Assassin's Creed.
Play much of the introduction to the game as Naue. Like, Yasuke is not available as a character until you get a pretty good ways into the story. I was probably like 10 or 15 hours into this before he really joined up, which surprised me a little bit.
I wonder if they changed that. Because there was rumors that because of all the drama that was going on last year before the game came out, was supposed to come out in November, there was a leak that said that they're removing him from the game. But then there was another article that said that they put him in less in the game. And now he just said, and he's the first person to say this, that you don't get to play him until 15 hours in the game. Like, there's some games that that are all, just the whole thing's 15 hours. So you have to wait 15 hours before you can play the other guy? Okay.
And at that point, you kind of got two problems. One, I've been playing this other sort of main protagonist all up to this point, and it also has the other problem of Yasuke honestly not quite getting as much story as Naue does, especially since he comes in with his own playstyle, which I have some issues with. Ultimately, though, I would say this is a story about revenge, and then turning that revenge or quest for revenge into something more, while also building a network to help you exact that revenge via our sort of hideout. And somewhat, to my surprise at least, as somebody who hasn't played this game series in quite some time, so maybe this is normal, I guess, but there was precious little about the Brotherhood Brotherhood and the Templars. It's in there kind of towards the end, but it's pretty minimal in terms of its impact on this game. But broad strokes opinion on the story, it was fine, I guess. The parts of it I enjoyed were Naoe's personal story about trying to get revenge for her father while also growing from that experience. And then Yasuke comes in and he's just kind of along for the ride. And then I think a lot of the writing around about how him and Naoe suddenly become super close friends almost immediately is just really weird. But otherwise, pretty much all of the main story objectives are just tracking down individual members of this cabal, doing a couple of quests to smoke them out, and then killing them, and that's kind of it. So, it's
That stab in the right there, that guy should not be moving after that.
fine. It just, doesn't really do anything more
It
than
looked
that.
like he was about to come back, right? Like stabbed him right here, right through the sternum.
Smoke them out, and then killing them, and that's kind of it. So, it's fine. It just, doesn't really do anything more than that, which was okay for me, I guess. But then we have the progression side of things. So there are a variety of progression mechanics with this game, and for the most part, it's fine. You always feel like you're progressing, and in some cases, like, for instance, gaining the knowledge ranks and then the masteries, or your skill trees, basically.
I'm listening to his voice as he says it, right? Him saying it, and then the tone of his voice when he says it. Listen to what he says.
Are a variety of progression mechanics with this game, and for the most part, it's fine. You always feel like you're progressing, and in some cases, like, for instance, gaining the knowledge ranks and then the masteries, or your skill trees, basically.
It's fine.
And even building up your hideout can feel satisfying enough. I would say my main problem with progression
Behind that, it's fine, is it's not really that fine.
is really down to things like the gear and some of the sort of tertiary RPG systems, because a lot of those just feel like numbers for the sake of numbers without adding anything impactful to the experience. And what I mean by that is that your level really does seem to matter more than anything else, because this increases your base stats. And then as long as your gear isn't like woefully behind your level, and you're not trying to fight enemies that are way above your level, you're unlikely to run into much of an issue. In fact, even within that context, sometimes I was still able to do stuff I probably shouldn't have been able to do, because the melee combat in particular just isn't particularly difficult. You basically dodge or deflect most stuff and then counter, and then things like your abilities actually give you some iframes to avoid damage. And even some of the masteries, which we'll get into, give you abilities and things that are more about taking out segments of an enemy's health rather than like dealing a specific amount of damage, which means that altogether a lot of these more number-oriented systems about increasing the damage of a specific weapon or a slight percentage increase to your adrenaline gain just don't really matter much. Now, the one exception to this is that you can engrave a lot of your
It looks like he leveled up almost everything.
equipment with like special perks and stuff. And some of those are impactful, especially the ones that allow you to do extra health segments on your assassinations, which can be stacked with things like masteries to then just instantly assassinate very, very high health enemies. But put all together, I think a lot of these systems feel disjointed. But now let's actually talk about some of them. So we have the hideout first and foremost. A little ways into the story, we gain access to a space that we can build and customize to our heart's content. Now,
Yeah, but Travis, this is why I like grabbing a bunch of different reviews. I like someone, because Jorraptor's a huge fan, right? So obviously you can hear it in his voice when Jorraptor was talking about the game. He likes Assassin's Creed games, right? Where this guy doesn't really play Assassin's Creed games. So I like watching a bunch of different content creators because I want to hear what they have to say. And then make my choice based on all of the info.
Most of this is just optional little bonuses that are helpful. I would say the Forge is really the most important building to update, and then you can also do missions and things and side quests, that kind of stuff that will give you access to extra scouts, which can help you find quest objectives and perform other tasks like gathering resources by smuggling them from caches out of castles and stuff. And later on, if you upgrade the scout building, you can even have them perform some tasks for you. But I say the Forge is the most important because that building gives you access to the ability to upgrade and engrave your equipment all the way up to the game's sort of soft level cap of 60. You can continue to level after that into what are called master levels, but master levels only provide an increase to your mastery points and not any more stat increases, as a matter of fact. So let's talk about knowledge and masteries now. So knowledge points are basically just used to increase.
I would almost take this guy's review over people that gush over anything, because if you're a fan of something, you're gonna look away from the things that are bad because you're a fan of it. If you're a person that's never played an Assassin's Creed game before and you're looking at this going, oh, this game looks pretty cool, I want to know what's inside the game and how it is. If you listen to someone that's just gushing over it, you're going to think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if you're listening to someone that's never really played the game before and come in and see what their point of view is, that might come in line more with people that never played that series before.
increase your knowledge rank, which increases the level of masteries you can obtain. Basically, the skill nodes that you can actually invest in. We gain knowledge points typically by just performing little activities out in the world, completing events at shrines and things like praying to various shrines, or collecting lost pages from scrolls at other shrines, or some player-specific activities, like for instance, meditation for Nawe, or...
Hold on one second. Let me rewind this a bit because he's going. It sounds like he's going more in depth with this, where the other person did not.
Master levels only provide an increase to your mastery points and not any more stat increases, as a matter of fact. So let's talk about knowledge and masteries now. So knowledge points are basically just used to increase your knowledge rank, which increases the level of masteries you can obtain. Basically, the skill nodes that you can actually invest in. We gain knowledge points typically by just performing little activities out in the world, completing events at shrines and things like praying to various shrines, or collecting lost pages from scrolls at other shrines, or some player-specific activities, like for instance, meditation for Nawe, or engaging in things like, say, horse archery for Yasuke. But once you get enough knowledge points, you go up in knowledge rank, which gives you the option to, of course, get those better and better masteries up your skill tree. But
Uh-oh. What happened? What happened? It's thinking.
Nawe, or engaging in things like, say, horse archery for
If it
Yasuke.
stops here again,
but once
it
you get
needs a
enough
buff, I
knowledge
guess.
points, you go up in knowledge rank, which gives you the option to, of course, get those better and better masteries up your skill tree. But the thing is, that only goes up to level 6, but there are 2 more knowledge ranks after that. Ranks 7 and 8 give you access to sort of knowledge paths, which are basically just global passives that you can increase things like your just base damage with, that kind of stuff, which is okay. Now, I will say the masteries for each character do wind up feeling pretty impactful. In fact, this is where Nawe is going to get a lot of boosts to her assassinations, as an example, and if you invest in things like her shinobi, tools, and katana, she can actually be really good at melee fighting, even though she's supposed to be more of the stealth shadows character, who is very fragile in normal combat. But you can absolutely get to a point where she's just as deadly in, just a full-on brawl as Yasuke is. At least for the most part, because Yasuke, fully upgraded, is a walking tank. Nothing can kill him. You get health back on kills, you get just incredible adrenaline gains, you just immediately keep using your abilities, which give you iframes, and Yasuke's playstyle, as a result of that, which we'll talk a little bit more of, actually just kind of feels out of place in this game because he's just a walking juggernaut. But then we have our gear. So the gear you get is based on your level, including unique...
Did you see how far he kicked him?
Juggernaut. But then we have our gear. So
Look at this dude when he gets kicked.
the gear you get
He fucking yeets him.
is based on your...
He yeets him. The dude, look how far back he is. That's a 30-foot boat. He just yeeted his ass fucking 15 feet in midair, and he still hasn't landed. He's at the pinnacle point right there.
Based on your level, including unique items. You can get unique items, which are going to be the things you use the most because of their unique effects. They're all whatever level you are when you get them. The thing is, you can take those back to the forge, your hideout, and then spend resources to upgrade them to your current level, or whatever your forge's maximum is, all the way up to the level cap of 60. As I've already mentioned, most of the actual numbers on this stuff seems to be completely irrelevant, but the effects that you can get from the actual base item and then what you can engrave onto them.
Okay, so now that he's said more in depth with it, this does seem like, and again, I'm going to assume that a lot of people are not going to buy the game. They're going to get it for the $18 for the Ubisoft Plus type of thing and try it out and give it a shot. So even if sales come out and it's like 4 million, I'm going to tell you, I think more people are going to try Ubisoft Plus for the lower price point. But the mechanics in this game and after watching 2.5 reviews so far, that it's a lot of stuff in the game. I remember 5 years ago when Skill Up talked about it was just Valhalla was bloated for just bloated sake. This seems much more in line. Like the game mechanics are here to kind of keep you in the game as long as possible, right? The people that want to play, move on. Everybody else is kind of in the game or is going to stay in there for 60, 80 hours. And the average person doesn't play a game like me, where you're even me with Avowed right now. We're like 4 weeks in, 5 weeks in, just 2 days a week, playing 3 hours a day, right? We gotta play 10 days at 3 hours, right? That's only 30 hours. So I gotta play 20 days worth of stuff to get to the 60-hour mark to complete the game. So if you can beat this game in 15 to 30 hours, right, and you only play 2 hours a day, or 2 hours a week for the average person, pardon me, all right, or 5 hours a week, your ass has got Ubisoft Plus for multiple months based on the game mechanics that they have going on here.
Additionally, at the Forge does actually get pretty impactful because you can add things like additional health segments to, say, your assassinations to sort of just make those assassinations kill even more and more difficult targets in a single hit. But there's also all sorts of other elements you can add to this as well. So ultimately, while some of this was okay, I would say that a fair bit of progression, if anything, just seems to be, again, numbers for the sake of numbers that doesn't really do anything, which is only really relevant because of how the world scales to your character as you move along. So while there are, when you start the game, areas that are much, much too high of a level for you, as your level increases, so does all of the world with you, which is why you're just base level.
That dude should be dead. He got stabbed with a sword through the throat.
Seems to matter more than anything else does. But that brings us to the gameplay and world of this one. So unsurprisingly, and much of what I expected here, is the fact that this is a checklist open world with a variety of things to do. We go to various towers or high points in order to reveal map markers around, and then we go check off those activities. But I will say that there are some things you won't actually see unless you go exploring, to the game's credit. So while the towers do mark off everything important for you, there are some things that you will not find just from doing that. You have to actually go explore and look for them. But that's
which it should be. Which I think Avowed does a really good job with their map. Like, if you want to explore, it rewards you for exploring. Hopefully this game does the same.
Was mostly pretty minimal and didn't really affect the game much, but, you know, at least there is some exploration outside of just these towers and their checklists associated with them. In fact, one thing that comes up a fair bit is that the game this time around uses seasons, and it uses these seasons as a way to both refresh and advance the world in some ways. Like, for instance, if you go through and wipe out an outpost, when the season changes, that place is going to get, like, renewed, so to speak. And then the season changes also clear bounties on Yasuke and Naue, which are mostly pointless anyway, alongside refreshing your scouts as an example. But outside of that stuff, it's also generally pretty useful to just get up to a high point and then use your eagle vision or observation to find quest objectives. And this is how, outside of the scout system...
Nate, then you would be above average gamer. The average gamer only plays 4 to 6 hours a week. So, congratulations. You're not an average gamer.
You're going to track down where various things are. Basically, the quest itself will give you a few hints about where this thing is, but then when you are in any given area, you can sort of observe, which is to sort of zoom in and mark resources and things that might be happening around you on your sort of display here. And then you can, of course, track things down that way. And that's how you can sort of more finely tune exactly where a particular quest objective might be, even though you don't know the specific location once you're in the general area. Because if you don't want to find it yourself, you have to use the scouts from your hideout, which you can increase the number you've got by upgrading your hideout and the associated building, but also just by recruiting some of them by doing side quests and everything. But most of those side quests are kind of dull and tend to be like kill 100 of these people, or basically just tracking down a particular group or ring of various targets for whatever reason because they're relevant to that thing. So assassination of various quests, NPCs. Now, the thing is, most of those side quests are really dull, and there was only 1 or 2 of them that were fun to engage with. There's one that involves a string of child abductions, which was by far the best one in my opinion, and really the only one that actually stood out to me. And then there was another one that actually involved some yokai and stuff. I thought that one was kind of cool as well. But by and large, most of the side quests are monotonous and they don't really add much to the game or flesh out the characters or the world even. Outside of the very specific like personal quests of Yasuke, Naue, and their hideout characters, because when you clear main story objectives, this will often put you into contact with certain characters that can join your hideout, which get a very little short intro quest line before they formally join you. But most of what we're going to be exploring the world doing, outside of just, you know, tracking down story objectives, of course, is exploring various little outposts and castles, things like that, taking down targets in order to get their loot that they've got. For instance, most castle locations have a few sort of leaders in the area that you can take down, which then gives you access to the reward chest there. And then those locations are often rich in resources as well, which you can assign your scouts to smuggle for you, which is where you're going to get most of your hideout resources, or just collect some of them manually when possible. And so that, in addition to the character-specific objectives like the meditation points for Naue or like horse archery for Yasuke, as I mentioned, are things you can get up to in the world. And for the most part, it's fine, but it didn't really wow me. Now, we can, for the most part, freely swap between Yasuke and Naue. Now, when you're in a dangerous place, it won't let you do this straight away. You have to sort of be in a safe location in order to do it. And what's more, oftentimes, you'll have a choice to play certain story missions as one or the other, which will, of course, slightly change what is happening in those missions, but, you know, it all ends the same way. Now, there are, however, some quests and things like that where you have to play through them as a specific character. They're personal stories, obviously, and then some locations can actually only be accessed by one or the other. As an example, Naue cannot move these large movable crates you find in some places, and there are these little dungeons called coffins, which are effectively tombs you have to navigate, and some of those have to be done by Yasuke, as an example. So to answer a question I'm assuming people are going to ask, well, you can play most of the game as one or the other, you are going to have to switch. One of the ways the game encourages you to do this is by implementing a bounty system. So if your character is caught during their stealth sections or whatever else, sometimes an enemy will run to ring a bell, and if you don't manage to stop them and they ring that bell, you are assigned a bounty for the rest of the season for that character. But it fades afterwards. The thing is, that's pretty much the only way that that bounty impacts the game at all. Like, when you have a bounty, obviously, some bounty hunters occasionally spawn in, but you can avoid them or just fight them. And then the guards that will wander around the various towns will attack you on sight at that point. But that's pretty much it. Civilians don't really change or react to you in any way, and in fact, if you kill civilians, you'll still desynchronize like you would in the past games, which effectively forces you to load a save. So the bounty basically only applies to this, and it really just seems to be a mechanic to try to pressure you into occasionally switching characters more often. And the thing about that is, when you switch characters, that character doesn't have the bounty, and the bounties are only province-wide anyway, so it's really just not much of a setback, which again is just one of the ways these systems feel a little half-hearted, frankly. But from there, let's talk about combat. So combat comes down to Yasuke and Naoe. Each of them have their strengths and weaknesses, and obviously a different gameplay style. Naoe is our assassin, she's much better at parkour and everything. Yasuke is the big melee guy.
I like how he's just running around. He's just running around and no one's hitting him.
Everything apart as a samurai. But the main thing I want to get across in this section is that while Yasuke is incredibly powerful, chewing through everything that moves, I would say this sort of like unkillable juggernaut playstyle is not supported by the game's melee combat very well, because that's basically what Yasuke felt like, an absolute unkillable killing machine. And the melee combat is so simple that there's just not enough here to really warrant that, and it's just kind of a power fantasy that gets old after like a couple of fights. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier,
so all three videos have said the exact same thing.
all there really is to melee combat in this game is that when the enemy flashes white or blue, you can deflect those attacks. Blue attacks indicate a flurry, so expect follow-ups. If they attack you with a red ability, you're supposed to dodge out of the way of that, and if you time it right, you'll leave the enemy vulnerable, which is also the same if you deflect properly. When an enemy is vulnerable, they take increased damage, and then things like your weapons and whatnot can provide various status effects like bleeding or poison, though they don't typically do much damage, and so unless you're combining them with other effects like Yasuke's masteries, which will allow him to just insta-kill enemies that are bleeding under so much health, there doesn't seem to be much of a point to them. Now, on our end, we can use some masteries as an active ability. When we use those abilities, we actually activate some iframes at the same time while that ability is in play. And between that stuff and Yasuke's ability to sort of...
Sorry, Nate. Just giving information. You do what you need to do as a parent.
Just regen health every time he kills something with some of his masteries. Unless you've just never played a video game before, I don't see how you could possibly die playing as Yasuke. And that's completely ignoring how his sort of upfront kill everything you see style doesn't really fall into line with what I would want from an assassin-oriented game. And as such, Yasuke just kind of feels like he doesn't fit here, and what his gameplay style is, it just also isn't supported by the melee combat of this game. Like, I don't think that combat is strong enough to support a character like Yasuke, because there's just absolutely...
You know what I find funny? And again, I'm nitpicking. It's a show. I'm entertaining. Okay, I think it's funny that the dude is slicing
like
and dicing,
fit here,
right?
And what his game,
like the blade, it's a samurai sword. I don't know if you guys have ever used a samurai sword or seen a samurai sword and how sharp they are and how they slice through people.
Play style is just also isn't supported by the melee combat of this game.
Slice. Dude's dead. He should be dead already. Okay.
Like, I don't think that...
But he hits him 7, 8, 9 times and then chops him up, chops his head off. Okay. Which I find
a character like
pretty
Yasuke,
funny because his blade might be really dull. He's gonna need to sharpen that thing.
There's just absolutely no threat to him at any point. Now you flip that then, and then you look at Naoe. Naoe is obviously much better at assassination. She's much more mobile. She's better at parkour. And what's more, when you get her masteries going, she's actually also pretty good at melee combat. But the sort of combat gameplay that I enjoyed the most with her was finding various ways between both her mastery and her gear to increase the amount of health she would just destroy people with in terms of her assassinations. Now, some of her masteries give her the ability to assassinate samurai with frontal attacks and attack targets that are otherwise immune to assassinations at the beginning of the game. So some of her progress just allows her to...
Yeah, I would like playing her more than him, definitely, for the stealth.
Assassinate bigger and bigger targets more easily. And that was what I enjoyed, sort of, getting that progression of not being able to attack these guys with assassinations initially, only to then turn around and use gear and those masteries to be able to just take out the biggest targets possible in a single hit, and then either just running off immediately or holding my own ground in melee after that, with a character that felt like she might actually die if I mess something up. And that's kind of the bulk of why, for me at least, Naoe seems like the sort of intended way to play this game, and Yasuke just feels like a power fantasy that does.
Which then literally goes into the fact of what people said in the beginning of last year. They kind of just inserted him into the game and because you play him later and he seems like an afterthought, kind of, right? I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to it.
Doesn't fit in. And there's obviously a little more to these things. Like, for instance, there are ranged options. Yasuke can use either a bow or a teppo, which is like a rifle. And Naoe gets various tools she can use, like, kunais, shurikens, and some more useful distracting tools so she can get in and sneak through places. So while I enjoy...
No, I get it, Ford. You can't have him just slice and then be dead in one hit. It's just funny that he's slicing. Then he chops off the head. It's like, that's a dull sword.
Enjoyed a specific portion of the combat experience with Naoe. The bulk of it was just kind of underwhelming to me. Which brings us to typically where I would put the Steam Deck section, but as a little reminder here, because of the review copy only being through Ubisoft Connect and the fact that this is supposed to be verified on deck, it seemed a little silly not to use the native Steam release version of this to test the Steam Deck with, because that would obviously just be a different experience from what you, the people presumably watching and potentially buying this, would get. So I didn't test it out here, but hopefully it is actually verified and runs well there, but we'll have to see. Which brings me to the positive and negatives. So on the positive side for me, it was basically the assassination gameplay, Naoe as a character and her personal story, and a few of the other side systems, like the scout system, and using that as a way to sort of obfuscate quest markers was fun for me. I enjoyed that. I think that's a novel way of approaching a system like that. And there's even a couple other things on that sort of front that I didn't get much of a chance to mention. Like, for instance, the HUD is pretty customizable. You can display how much of that as you want, basically, and there's a host of accessibility options, which I thought were great. But unfortunately, that just isn't enough to outweigh all of the negative things I saw with this title. The microtransactions and their implementation, the technical problems I ran into, the fact that Yasuke's gameplay doesn't feel like it belongs in this game. Most of the story was underwhelming. So much of progression with things like gear seems like just bloated, half-hearted systems, which brings me to my conclusion.
I've said that for years and years, though, with their games. A lot of the stuff just feels bloated.
And as I mentioned towards the beginning, for me, I was kind of going back and forth between a buy on sale and a do not recommend for this one. And that's largely because I don't think everything about this game is awful, but I also just didn't really enjoy the bulk of it either. And ultimately, for that reason, and the fact that I think some of the core things it's trying to do just don't really work for me, I'm gonna give it a don't recommend. And that's largely because I think the only situation where I could see myself buying this game, even on sale, and being happy with it is if I picked it up for like $10 or $20. And obviously, at a base price of $70, I think the deluxe edition is like $90, plus all the microtransactions they've crammed in there. It's frankly just a pass for me, but ultimately, I'm just one guy. If people do pay for this and enjoy it, I hope it's what they wanted out of it. And if anything, I would encourage people to watch reviews from people who have played more of the Assassin's Creed franchise than I have. But from my perspective, after jumping into this game after so long away from
and that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing for you, right? We're watching multiple people.
Franchise as a whole, I was pretty thoroughly unimpressed by this one, which is obviously the reason for the don't recommend. I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this particular video. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.
All right, so there's the third video. We have one more video to watch, which is ACG, right? I'm not getting the game. Right? I have no interest in the game, but I like watching stuff like this, hearing stuff out, because down the road, if I want to play the game, I'll make a choice if I like the game or not like the game based on what people are saying about it. And if people like certain parts, like I love listening to people that break each section down, right? So if you're a person that likes story and they tell you the story is great, then you'll be like, oh, I like the story. If you're a combat guy and they say the combat's not very good, then you're like, nah, I might pass on it, right? Take what you want and hear what you want to hear from people that you disagree or agree with. I'm just showing it, giving some insight, and yeah. So let's watch ACG. All the creators that we are watching today are in the link down in the description, or their links are down in the description. ACG, his video is 31. He talks pretty fast. We're gonna leave it at normal, because it might be hard to understand him if we go a little faster, but we'll see what happens.
Japan's always been the break glass in case.
Dog says, question, will it be better or worse than Suicide Squad? It's probably better. Probably better, because if you were a comic book guy and you were upset about what they did to the comic book, this is not based on fictitious characters. This is supposed to be accurate, historical, feudal Japan. So if you're a big fan of feudal Japan, you might like it, might not like it. I don't know.
Case of emergency location for Assassin's Creed. But as the immortal rap ninja DMX once said, it's not what you heard, it's what you'll hear it. And none of this will matter if the change isn't profound. Also, yes, there will be spoilers about 16th century Japan in here. So if you haven't read all the tweets from supposedly time-traveling historians on Twitter, then watch out. How can Shadows hold up, not only as a single game, perhaps to a first-time player, but also against current titles and against all past AC games, but in particular, to Valhalla's insane success, going on to make almost $2 billion. Speaking of two, Shadows
Did AC Valhalla made $2 billion? Jesus.
introduced the first time where two protagonists, two vastly different ways to ruin someone's day, are leading the way. Well, there was Syndicate, but this is far beyond Jacob and Evie arguing over which group of children they could save from London's slavery hat shops. Assassin's Creed Shadows drops players into the chaotic, backstab-happy world of 16th century Japan, during a time when warlords played musical chairs with power and trust lasted about as long as informing the region of the latest leadership changes. On one side, you've got
Nate says, why would you... Wait, who said that? AC game, why would you buy it if it's not even on sale? If you're not a fan? Here's the thing. A lot of people don't want to... They want to know if they're going to spend $70 on a game, they want to know if it's right for them, right? Maybe for someone else, $70 is a big... No big deal. But if someone only buys... Again, the average person only plays 3 to 4 games a year. Buys 3 to 4 games a year. And if this is one of those games that they want to spend their $70 on, they want to do the research. And if the research is they're like, I don't know if this is a game that I want to pick up at full price, I'll wait. That's the reason. It's not a black or white thing. This is not and when I say black or white, it's not racist. I'm saying black or white like, oh, it's good or bad, up or down, left or right. It's people are looking at it going, do I really want to pay the $70 for this game? I'll hold off for this. Maybe I'll save the $70 for another game that I'm more interested in. They could still be interested in the game without being a fan of AC Shadows. Maybe they like feudal Japan. Maybe they like ninjas. Maybe they like the setting. Maybe they like Ubisoft, but they've never tried an Assassin's Creed game before.
Yasuke, serving under the current daimyo, wielding brute strength, weapons that hit like freight trains, and a skeleton key to open most doors in the form of a 250-pound man. On the other, there's Nahue, a shinobi, which is Shadow's way of finally trying to reintroduce...
What do you want a cookie? Do you want a cookie, Nate? That you paid $90? I mean, I don't. Who cares what you paid? I don't give a shit what you paid.
Stealth and true assassination back into a game that's been stealing that name for years. Elusive, smooth, agile, sneaky, and equipped with a Kurisagama that swings through the air like a medieval weed whacker of death. Both sides offering two different things. Now, you could say, at least at the start, that one is on the good side and one's on the bad side. That's like not realizing the rebellion would be cancer if your body was Star Wars. It's missing a lot of the context. And this context is delivered to you across intertwining storylines that tackle themes of honor, survival, family loyalty, and political backstabbing. So basically just another Tuesday in feudal Japan. And it's not just the dual protagonist delivery that's getting a bit of an overhaul. The open world is on a seasonal cycle, meaning you'll be sneaking through cherry blossom groves one moment and slogging through snow-covered villages the next. If you played Assassin's Creed Origins or any of the games prior, expect a world of similar scale but with far more verticality. Shadows to skulk in and rice-papered doors to slice through like lethal home invasion ads. Oh yeah, subscribe or I'll die. The gameplay starts off with a short animus section, and then you're thrown to the world, 16th century Japan, bouncing between both characters shortly for their entrance.
What I did, 10% items hideout, 15% skill testing, 5% hating the kid, 35% exploration, and 35% stabbing things.
And introductions, with Yasuke being tasked to confab with Japanese royalty, and then transforming into a samurai. Shadows likes to brace those two against one another, at least for a short time, offering a glimmer of reason why you can see that they might be on the same side in the upcoming troubles, or at least leaning towards it. Open up the world with tutorials explaining movement, combat, switching weapons as you get more, riding horses, meditation, painting, and how the game moves you through the story, which is a massive objective board. As you move forward and meet new characters, you take on new jobs. Each board opens up with a display of a thematic ring of people that are involved in whatever particular
dog
aspect of the story you're investigating. A group of challenges, a series of lords, a smattering of evil SOBs bent on taking everything for themselves. And to find them, you have to investigate leads that are related to them. Play the game in discovery mode, you need to travel the world looking for those clues yourself, or once you build your hideout, you can send agents out to scout out information about whatever objective you currently have. This not only involves different storylines, worldviews, playable moments, but it also extends out their playstyles to dramatically different angles, focusing on stealth for one, outright force for the other. You can also switch between them pretty much at will. There are particular quests that are
at will, but you have to wait 10 to 15 hours to unlock the second character.
Specific for each one, and there are certainly places that will be easier or more difficult depending on
I hated that in Avengers, when we played Avengers, and you couldn't play Captain America until like the very last mission or whatever. You had to go like 10 to 12, it's like 12 hours. I think it was like 10 or 12 hours in before you could play Captain America. I hated that.
Who you're playing as. Also, while Shadows still has fast travel and synchronization points, it doesn't end up unlocking a ton of noticeable locations by doing that. Instead, after you find a high location, you manually use focus on particular spots around the game world that you can see to get a little bit more information about them. That focus system is also used in combat, which I'll get to in a second. While both have typical light and heavy attacks, holding the attack
I love I love how he's sneaking right there.
in combat,
He's
which
a big
I'll get to in a
6
second.
foot.
While
I don't
both
know
have
how
typical
tall he is.
light
He like
and heavy
6'4".
attacks.
The guy's looking directly at him. He's like, what is that? Is that someone coming towards me? This seems like the same skill set in Star Wars Outlaws.
Holding the attack button down on either powers up an attack into what's called a posture attack. These do extra damage, break most enemies' blocks, and in some ways can be comboed to others depending on what you're using. Also, both have defensive moves. For example, both can dodge out of the way. Yasuke can parry directly backwards, which forces enemies away. Nahue deflects them. Regardless, both of these can also result in enemies going into what's called a vulnerable state. This is a mini state of stunned, basically
Her combat
with giving
looks
you
so much
additional
better.
powers and openings that can be taken advantage of. What makes this shift so impactful is that the game doesn't just let you flip between playstyles, or it doesn't force you to. If you're Nahue, combat is punishment for failing at stealth, or it's your choice if you decide to do that. And while he doesn't have the ability to focus in and see enemies, Nahue can. She can use that focus to see the chances of her assassin's blade and its kills being successful, because depending on the upgrades that you work through, some of the enemy's defenses with the first stealth attack may be too much for you to break through, and assassinations can go horribly wrong for both characters. The result, every battle does feel pretty deliberate, and with some of the changes they've made, you do have more tools, or at least it feels like you
Batman's
do, to
fighting style
engage
was
in those
awesome,
battles.
Luke.
You don't have the spiritual ones that we see in, say, Valhalla, but they feel a bit more grounded here, even if, let's be honest, kicking somebody across a mountain does seem a little overpowered. Still feels good.
He kicked him. I'm telling you, that kick is ridiculous, man.
This also depends on the weapon, as I said before. So, for example, Yasuke has the Naginata. This is a long-range weapon, but not in the same way a spear is. It's wide and sweeping. It's 8-foot defensive zones made out of offensive threat. Combos you learn both naturally as well as from a skill list can help you combine attacks, moving between katana and that in a natural way to keep attacks flowing and hold pretty much everybody at bay. While his club is shorter range, its impact strength is insane. There are others that you get as well when it comes to powers, and sometimes combos, though depending on where you put your point.
Bro, even the big guy he kicked. Look at
That you
the
get as well
distance when
when
he
it comes
kicks
to
this
powers,
dude.
and sometimes combos, though depending on where
That dude is 20 feet right there.
you put your
Ends up 40
points.
to
They'll
50
unlock
feet away.
earlier or later. He also has a bow and arrow, which is almost silent, works really well to give you a small amount of stealth strategy up front, while his rifle
Yakuza can go prone, move slower, much louder movements, very, very loud assassinations.
is just a huge
I like that he
hard-hitting
does the
explosion
little clips
that
up on
tells
the top-
everybody
on
in
the
the
top.
area, hey, you know what? Enemy right here. With Nahue, it's different. Her strikes are faster. Her inability to truly
yeah,
block
the
means
power
deflecting
fantasy is
blows
definitely
to the
there, gamer.
side, combined with her ability to dash more quickly, is useful. She can get in and out of fights fast, but she also has the Kirsagama, meaning that both of the characters have really a crowd control item. Each of them
I think her combat looks better though. I do. It just looks smoother. It looks awesome.
has their own mastery
She doesn't have the power, but
lists as well that unlock when you find weapons or equip them. One way AC tries to show the development of the physical and mental is that you have knowledge rank, which goes up via none of your physical activities. It's all mental activities. As with normal levels, knowledge levels raise for both characters at the same time, so you don't have to go back and do anything else with anybody if you decide to play with one character for a while and then switch them out. Like most of these skills, there is a number of passive ones adding percentages here and there, which, let's be honest, are just boring. Now, one of the best improvements, though, is
so that's 4 for 4. Actually, 3 for 4 because Jorraptor didn't really bring it up. But that whole section that Legacy Gaming was talking about that said it was pointless, everyone else said he said pointless, but they're saying it's boring. It's
prone. Now you can slip into the grass.
Right? He says it's right here.
Most of these skills, there is a number of passive ones adding percentages here and there, which, let's be honest, are just boring. No,
And that's what Altern said earlier. He said it's more boring than pointless.
one of the best improvements, though, is prone. Now you can slip into the grass, crawl under buildings, use water to mask your movements.
Play the whole game like this. Travel everywhere and do stealth gaming like this, just crawling on the ground the entire time.
It's a small addition when you think about it, but it makes a massive difference to the way the game feels and even way sightlines are used. And yes, both characters can do it. Now, Ubisoft has also adjusted the AI, and this is important. On the harder difficulties, guards don't just exist to fill a particular spot. Does that mean Shadow's AI is incredible? Actually, no, but it has made some changes that I think work. For example, on easy, enemies wander around like they're just killing time before lunch, barely aware their coworkers are getting mysteriously transferred to the afterlife. Medium cranks that awareness up a bit, making them less like clueless extras and more like people actually want to keep their heads attached to their bodies. Hard, though, that's where the game stops holding your hand and starts really just squeezing your throat. Guards noticeably track movements more realistically. They react dynamically to sound and light more quickly and turn a rooftop into a death trap the second they suspect that you are up there. This is where Shadows feels the most alive. It's not a playground, but a bit of a battlefield that changes depending on what steps you take. They track footprints
So in his opinion, playing on a harder difficulty makes the game feel better.
in the snow. They respond to the noises, and they don't actually just give up right away if you hide in a bush. If you blow out a lantern, they'll investigate. If you disrupt their patrol, they won't just instantly reset. To give you an example, on easy, I was able to get away with a grapple hook to a ledge pretty easily as somebody was following me by just going around a corner, leaving an evaporating ghost of myself to indicate where they last saw me like a ninja fart in the wind. In hard, however, climbing to the top lost the first enemy, but then 2 others saw me climbing and a third saw me on the roof, ultimately making the entire situation way worse than it could have been, and their reactions to it were almost instantaneously, which was to yell out and fire. That being said, when I returned to the area as Yasuke, this played out pretty much completely differently. Yasuke can't climb every
Yeah, see, that makes sense. Stabbing through the paper door to kill the guy, but the thing before through the thick-ass wood beam, come on.
everything, so running around a corner needed to be almost instant, and going prone was required because the dude's bigger than most bushes. Name your sex tape. For example, this exact situation changed when I took Yasuke to it and I tried a heavy assassination. He does the assassinations like this, like most people celebrate a fucking soccer goal. It's even called brutal assassination. During nights and with no environmental sounds, this alerts everybody. However, I did notice that if I was able to get a guard just a bit farther away, the rain and wind actually muted a bit of that attack sound. Realize that it is a soft detection system, so risk is rewarded with either an amazing moment of killing somebody and then
I like that they put the destruction in there, but that's not how paper would break. Yeah.
detection system. So
I like how they did it.
risk is rewarded
The wood is splintering, which is
with
nice.
either an amazing
But
moment
the
of
paper,
killing somebody and then heavily trundling back to the shadows, or with everybody in 50 feet figuring out that you just double-fisted a dude above your head. Another change is that Shadows does seem to do away with the sweepstakes winning goldathons that the prior games had. There is a lot less random loot and money in Shadows than any other game in the past decade. Weapons and armor start out at a particular level when you grab them, and a quality. You've got common, uncommon, rare, and epic, with each adding either stat improvements or extra engraving slots, with weapons having attributes like DPS or notification.
I think the cosmetics and stuff look good as well. Like they just look, the stylization of it is cool. Now I don't know if they're culture accurate or historically accurate, but just as a gamer looking at it, going pretty look badass.
That they can
It's
cause
paper
particular
glass.
afflictions like poison or stunning somebody. There is also legendary items that you get from specific moments. The same goes for the armor. You get it from merchants or from exploration around the world, sometimes in hidden locations, other times in places more dangerous, like castles,
Right, so you're rewarded for exploring. I like that.
which are mini dungeons in a way, where not only do you have to get to a chest in the center of the location, but you also have to kill the location's main protectors, which can be insanely difficult. Just a point of note, these guys are rough. Each has their own skills. Sometimes you get other characters like almost a shinobi or massive warriors with heavier armor than you even have, and they love to team up. So facing 3 or 4 normal enemies and 2 of these characters is just hanging out trying to see who can turn anybody else into a fucking puddle of tomato.
Z asked, do we think they added the other character because the last game were more battlelore game? Wait, so you think they added the girl or you think they added the guy? See, I think they were both there from the beginning. And then there were stories of that they removed him because of the stuff that was happening, right? All the, just the bad publicity and stuff that was happening. So now you don't get to see him for the first 10 hours. So I think they removed him. That's the theory. I think they both were there from the beginning.
Pace quicker. That doesn't include the enemies that raise alarms and flood locations with even more. Now, once done upgrading weapons and armor, you can also upgrade and build that hideout. This is fully customizable as a base on a hidden parcel of land that you have. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but going there in winter and just running around and watching the different characters interact and just seeing some of the locations that I was able to build over time was pretty cool. As a complete package, it's a game that has some paced out feelings, a slower starting than I would have ever liked, especially as it has a lot of story and a great deal of changes to deliver to the gamer, and it's really in no rush to get going. Once it does, once you get to switch between characters, once you can move through the world and just explore, then it was actually a profoundly different experience. Perhaps too Spartan for some,
really
I could
slow,
see that,
really
but
slow
what surprised
starting
me is
off.
that both characters, while fitting an archetype,
So it's like a slow start and then it gets good. What, 10 hours?
while responding to the weather as well as the day-night cycle and what that means, played into each other's pocket if you decided you want to accept those negatives. Meaning, if you take the stealth character and want to go loud, or the loud character and crawl through some blood and shit to sneak up on somebody, you can't. And once you start engraving items onto the weapons and really changing these massive statistics
That's great, Nate. You don't get to use him until 10 hours in.
on them, it can
So you use him for the opening to introduce the characters, and then he's gone for 10 hours.
also make you feel like, you know what, I'm going to experiment a little bit. Be aware, though, that if you go out and start killing a bunch of people, or if you get caught killing innocents and then run away, and you're painted around those locations as being an outlaw, and you're wanted until the next season shows up, or you switch characters. Now, that being said, I do wish the combat flowed just a bit better, especially enemy attack patterns. Other than the bosses and the sub-bosses inside of castles, the enemies all seem to be trained by the exact same leader, a true army, which means
See, this is why I like going in stealthy, because if you stealth kill somebody, one stab, they're done. If you try to fight everybody, then you got to hit them 100 times.
their patterns are usually 3 to 4 move sets depending on your location and distance. I don't want Dark Souls shit that's stupid, nor do I want the rock, paper, scissors of Ghost, though both have their place. I just feel that there's something that's always been slightly missing from the AC games in particular, and I would have liked to have seen that stepped up a bit here. It didn't end up breaking the game, though. The game does handle leads, stealth, base upgrading, weapons, enemies, new tactics when it comes to sensing you, absolutely in a better way than, let's say, Valhalla did. When it comes to better, let's see if the graphics are. First of all, there are moments of pure friggin' brilliance in this game. Verticality, number one. It's on display everywhere. In a location where I think some people mistakenly think that there wouldn't be as much, it's on display almost right away and never stops. And the draw distance in this game is the best I've seen in an AC title by far. Seeing an ancient Japanese fortress off in the far distance and then working your way through bamboo fields, huge, massively deep forests, and then across the coast and an ocean, leaping onto a boat, finding some small island that doesn't look like it has anything on it, but then you find a group there meditating and discussing the current kingdom's changes. Then you trudge through deformable snow on your way up the mountain and cut through a drift, and then cut through the walls of someone's ramshackle outpost, ignoring the walkway up that's covered with guards, and just yelling surprise.
He is the Kool-Aid man. He's literally just busting everything down.
And then slicing everybody down. One of the best parts is that destruction, that ability to slice through somebody's wall or spot. While it's not perfect, not every single element can be cut. Cutting through cover to bear down on some dude beating a drum who expected a shitload of things in a day, but not a rampaging samurai hammering him in the head with a huge spike club is awesome. Cutting down.
Right, Eclipse. That's what I really loved about the Assassin's Creed back in the day, right? I would sneak in everywhere, right? I didn't want to get detected at all. So I would take my sweet time, go in, stab him in the neck, right? Slice the throat, whatever, and be done. And that's how I like playing these games. I don't like going in loud. there's so many games you go in loud. I like sneaking in this.
Down bamboo in a forest might lose you half an hour as you just explore and try
Altern says he's the Kool-Aid man. Isn't that racist? I mean, I guess, sure.
to find things that you can destroy. Also, the dynamic weather system does look good. It's noticeable not only in the difference between, let's say, rain and sunny, but at times, like in real life, when you notice that the sun is actually shining, but the rain's coming down sideways and it's preceding the clouds, and you can watch it roll in, or huge puddles building up all along the game world. It's the fact that the weather also changes when moving between seasons that I don't like. I get it. Each of the 4 seasons is triggered by those story elements, but we haven't got a truly dynamic one yet that adds snow, deletes snow, that kind of stuff in a game, so it's probably too much to ask here. I'd kill for that someday in a game where you can see those in real time. Also, when you slip on a frozen pond in this game or watch an enemy do it when the water freezes over and what you passed through originally by swimming is now frozen and you end up slipping and sliding, that's some excellent physical storytelling. It just looks hilarious. The same can be said for the animation.
That shot right there, that looked crazy. Not
That's
that one.
some excellent physical storytelling.
This one right here,
just looks hilarious.
like just watching the grass move in the wind, and then like that view, man, that's good.
Hilarious.
Right there.
The same can be said for the animations. They're good and bad. Many are AC-typical, meaning they don't really feel exactly real. Others work incredibly well here. For example, Yasuke hits and just has a general King Kong smashing through shit kind of feel, and the finishers with him are awesome. The first time you chop someone's arms off separately from their head for no reason other than to shut their scream hole is very cool. However, there are others that don't measure up. In particular, climbing itself is a mixture of old and new parkour. It still has times where it feels like the game's edges are stickier than they should be, and that can look goofy as hell. And climbing with a grapple can go between looking fantastic to feeling like something ancient in the very same second. Speaking of ancient and, well, current textures, I would say for the most part they...
Is she climbing with wood clogs? I don't know what the shoe is called. I apologize. You can't be quiet with those.
Look pretty current. It depends on the setting that you're using. Design-wise, however, and just world-wise, I like this better, at least the world, than I did Valhalla, and perhaps even, at least in some places, Odyssey, which is probably the only game I really absolutely liked in the AC new trilogy. That's because not only the new locations, but that huge, noticeable, profound verticality that's delivered in a different way here, and that dynamic weather and vegetation when it comes to the seasons, but also because of the limited destruction, which just feels like it changes some of the gameplay. Graphically, I have no real issues with the game. Again, some of the animations are reused. We get that kind of thing, especially because this is not a brand new engine. I would like to see those fixed in whatever series we get next. But let's discuss the requirements for getting this to your system. We're going to discuss the PC ones for now. The game has a mode called selective ray tracing, which sounds required, but it's actually not. This runs a software version of ray tracing in the hideouts.
Oh, is that what it is, Ford? She bought a microtransaction for silent wooden shoes
only that Ubisoft created, so you don't need to have ray tracing enabled cards to play the game, nor actually use the hideout. It's just that the hideout area runs a software version because they have so many changes going on that you make in the game world at any time that you want to. And then from there up, they have different levels of ray tracing, from basic, which is global illumination, and that of course requires a card that supports it, and then extended, which uses ray tracing for global illumination in the world as well as reflections. Performance with a 4090 shows a couple things. The first is the game leans heavily on the GPU, and while you can get 60 FPS with most settings on high, with no upscaler, when the game throws a ton of environmental effects at you or changes the time or during a larger battle, this does drop. The big killer here is of course ray tracing and the connections to it in the options settings. It does offer DLSS, XLSS, and FSR for upscaling, as well as in-engine upscaling that can be set to low, medium, or high. But you can also set a resolution target as well as an FPS target. Frame gen is also available in this. And the game does have a ton of settings. The biggest impactors to FPS that I could find were, of course, ray tracing. Then you have level of detail, distance drawing, and shadows. They may have to do some adjustments. Now, an issue that I did notice for this is cutscenes, for whatever reason, no matter what I did, were locked at 30 FPS. I've emailed them, asked them, and I haven't heard anything, but it was over the weekend. This highlights another bit of a problem that I had with the game, which is lip syncing. I didn't feel like it was fantastic, and it's noticeable in a lot of the cutscenes, probably because you add the 30 FPS to it, and when you see that big drop, it's just something that's noticeable on the PC. Also, there's a reason why. Let's talk about sound, music, and voice just for a second. Voice. This is pretty hit and miss. First, I'm going to get this out of the way. You can listen to Shadows in many ways. You have different voiceovers as well as fully cinematic style mode that moves everything and everyone out of English into their respective languages with subtitles that you can have show up if you want. First, I suggest if you're going to do that, you make sure those subtitles are on, because there are a couple that will end up having a discussion outside of the main characters where there's a lead or a little bit of information that can help you. Next up, some of the later characters, some of the more profoundly important ones, are awesome. They're delivered very well, from menace to mysteriousness all the way to flirtation and fun-loving. Some of my favorites were also later quest lines that revolved around finding, for example, past students of a teacher of yours, and each one of them was distinct. However, the two main leads are two vastly different performances. And I say this with all due respect to whatever was going on. This is something that I think a lot of people noticed in some of the trailers. Not always delivery. It's not lost in translation. It's not lacking attempt. It's just everything about the way she sounds is oddly off-kilter and short and stilted. And a lot of this is because the writing in Shadows is fairly basic. A lot of these characters live in a world where they don't do a ton of talking. So it actually makes sense, but it just doesn't come off incredibly well. Yasuke, on the other hand, no real issues. The voice is strong, it's measured, carries some weight. There's a tiny bit more nuance there. NPCs and quest dialogue do take a hit in English, though. Dialogue for many is really bare bones, delivered in one-liners, and then boom, a bow, and you're done, and a screen updates with a quest. Also, and I just don't know how this showed up again, Ubisoft's voice recordings have that weird processing that we heard in Valhalla. It's not compressed in the same way. It's almost like the top and bottom, though, have a bit more of a harmonic edge to them that have been changed during the actual recording. And there are times when Yasuke in particular is talking and it sounds slightly robotic. A normal gamer might play this and not ever notice it. I spent a couple hours testing it, different systems, different headsets, even going back to older Ubisoft games. Much less noticeable than Valhalla, but I did pick up on it. I usually play games in English.
I think that's such a nitpick type of thing, but at the same time, I get what he's saying. But 99.9% of the people won't even recognize it.
English first because of the aforementioned subtitles, quests, leads, and barks not getting lost in subtitle drops or chaos. However, I would say this is one of the few games where switching might behoove you, even if you're like me. Next up is sound. Now, for the most part, the sound is excellent. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, the world is reacting to sounds in a way that makes stealth more dynamic, but also just because you're hearing it, you can react to it. I reacted to things like footsteps on wet stone, the rustling of branches, the creaks of doors, and that can be the difference between slipping by unnoticed or being forced into a fight for both of you. Heavy rain does seem to drown out smaller noises, which did seem to make it more difficult for the enemy to listen and understand exactly where you were, but it also does the same to you. And that balance between function and environment made every space feel a tiny bit more deliberate in its soundscape. Changing seasons also play a big role in how sound actually is delivered. Winter dampens that sound, it muffles footsteps under thick snow just a bit more. And then if you go to something like autumn, shifting leaves.
No, I get
and
that, Eclipse. I mean, I understand why he's doing it, but again, it's there for people that are like him, that are like really, like coffee aficionados or wine aficionados, audio aficionados that totally get it. Again, 99.9% of the people will not even recognize it. They might notice something, but they won't know what it is. You know what I mean?
Wildlife can make it pretty unpredictable, and at times you're trying to figure out, is that an enemy or is that an animal? And there's a lot of information that ends up being parsed through the audio. Combat also follows that same attention to detail. Blades scrape across armor, wooden shafts splinter on impact, and you can hear the chains sweeping through the air with this distinctive metallic whine.
Bro, did you see that?
Impact,
watch this slice.
You can hear the chains sweeping through the air.
Watch this slice. Like you see the exoskeleton. Like literally you can see the slice or the skeleton with inside the neck.
Distinctive metallic whine, or even as you're running, the small jingle of the chains. Some really good audio effects here. You can even tell the difference between two people with two different types of clubs hitting one another. There was also a good deal of environmental sampling when you were moving around the forest, whether it comes to forest animals or just the wind in the trees. When it comes to the music, For a game that's based in one of the more naturally, culturally solid time spans and locations, steeped
Is the hip hop soundtrack still in there?
in tradition, AC Shadows offers a surprising amount of musical genres and diversity. It ends up having 3 different voices or 3 different composers for the game. Ubisoft didn't just stick to that usual orchestral swelling atmospheric sounds that you might actually think, or more traditional Japanese instrumentation. They have some modern electronic music as well, and some straight up psychedelic, almost rock fusion and trap music. For the most part, the traditional pieces you would expect to hear in, say, Shogun, Last Samurai, or others, are here. But you also hear music that is, like I said, psychedelic, pulse driven. It just depends on what's going on in
That doesn't seem. Now I'm trying to put it in perspective here, right? So the game takes place in feudal Japan. Obviously, I understand Assassin's Creed itself. You're just a character in is it called the Artemis, right? That you're in a machine and you're from current day or the future, whatever. Okay, but why would you play that type of music during this setting, right?
the game. And trust me, it is noticeable. When a cutscene goes on and boom, you have psych rock stylings playing out, it takes just a minute for you to go like, what am I hearing?
Right.
Ultimately, once I grew accustomed to it, I actually liked it. I do expect there to be a lot of discussion around it, though. It's not the first time we've seen many groups working on games, but it's one of the first I can remember having this kind of distinctly different feel amongst the 3 that resolve around a particular style, and then to accentuate a pace change or a stylistic moment, something feels distinctly different, and that plays out. Without spoiling anything, let me say by the end of Shadows, I did understand the approach and appreciated it, even if more, as I say, a fan of the slightly more traditional leaning.
See, so what he just said there, I'm assuming that because part of the story, maybe you're hearing stuff coming in through your subconscious or something. I don't know.
In music, I didn't necessarily feel like those styles meshed as well as maybe Ubisoft intended. Lastly, let's talk about bugs. It's actually pretty polished. In the wild open world, I'm still gonna notice a couple janky bits in most Assassin's Creed games, and I did here. Had 1 or 2 animation bugs. I had 1 crash, but it is far more polished, at least in my experience, than Valhalla. Now, this is an open world game, which means people are gonna run into all kinds of crazy stuff, but it definitely felt a good deal more polished than that. That's also reflected in things like their accessibility options, which include color adjustments, screen narration, customizable HUD, and so on. One last thing before we get to fun factor is micros. The typical Ubisoft items for supplies and map packs are here that will end up unlocking things like showing you locations. There was no EXP or anything like that that I could see when it comes to the purchases at this time. All of those follow, I would say, the somewhat traditional trend that Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla have followed, with the more mythological mounts and cosmetics than the game proper has. How does all this come together? Well, that's fun factor. I didn't expect to like both characters this much. My time in the preview was 50-50. Hey, they had 2 characters in the game. I think it's my job to test them in the preview, and I did the same in the review. And after spending 40 plus hours with it, I wasn't expecting neither to really resonate more or less than the other. And it might be some of the reasons why, like I said before, you can switch if you want to take the risk. It fascinates me that it went against, I guess, my own thought processes. As I played it, I found myself enjoying both more than I anticipated. I found pushing up against the game on the hardest difficulty setting in both combat and stealth to be more enjoyable than expected. Sometimes playing against type, sitting on a building, overlooking a fortress entrance, and legitimately...
Animus projects can also be done to get points for some armor and weapons. There you go.
Watching guards move around, watching for the possible semi-bosses inside, and looking for where the alarm bells were, and then deciding to go in and who to go in with, checking for locations of entrance, understanding that Norway has limited climbing ability in many locations because this is a land where fortresses are meant to stop just her type of character, and then deciding to take my chance. What was better still, that as long as you keep your weapons and armor upgraded or within a couple levels of the enemies, they didn't really feel spammy. That's also because your power attacks are damn powerful. Going against a warlord that's a full couple regions above you is going to take forever, even with those special moves, but it felt better than Valhalla did. Customizing each part of the sword to make it reflect the new etchings I'd put on it, going back and forth, just offered more customization than I had actually expected. And building up that atmosphere when it comes to the hideout was very cool. It's something we have seen before with hideouts in a couple of their games, but the ability to actually go in and adjust it and do so many changes was cool. Now, sure, random events exist, but riding around in this game There is one thing you will see, a massive amount of forest animals. I just have to mention this in the fun factor because it's
Forest animals?
hilarious. You're riding, and without bandits consistently raging around, it's a little bit quieter than you might expect. But all of a sudden, you'll realize you have an entire Disney film worth of characters moving around with you. It'll be deer.
Yeah, what's the deal?
It'll be rabbits. It'll be elk. It'll be all kinds of creatures moving around. And it almost feels like every time Ubisoft makes a game, there's one
What
part
is
they go
happening
ham on.
there?
And when it comes to wildlife, that's where they went ham. Still, as an AC
Or should I say, what's the deer with that?
game, yeah,
No? Okay.
without any doubt, it feels a lot like others. Underlying that admission is the idea that you either like one of the series or you hope to like them, because if you hate them, then there's no reason to be here. And I can say, despite still having the same DNA, it's changed more than prior games between the series, even with the later stuff that I got to say would be a little spoiler heavy that I won't cover here. I'll cover in podcasts. However,
Look how far that kick. Look, I smile every time it happens. Right? That is just I would just be kicking everybody. I'd just be kicking everybody. He literally flew the length of the house.
just as the saying goes, to sharpen a sword, you are cutting off parts of its own body. If you ever were sitting back wishing Assassin's Creed would slow down, take a breath, and let the world settle in before throwing you into instant action, well, congratulations, because Ubisoft heard you loud and clear, stripped the engine out of the car and left you pushing it up a hill for the first 1 or 2 hours.
What's going on,
It's
Aaron?
slow to me, and it just wasn't super enjoyable then. The game dials back the action so aggressively at the start, it feels like it is almost punishing you. There's a point where hesitation, I think, becomes hibernation, where pause turns to paralysis, and where refinement turns to removal, where Shadows doesn't just strip things away, it carves them out at that starting. And that starting, for me, is very slow. But once I got into it, hey, the
I have
combat,
not.
slicing through some stuff, and, just moving along here in the story, that was fun. I think overall the writing's pretty basic. The story was what I could follow and what I assumed would happen. But there were some later surprises. You just got to get to it. And speaking of get to it, Christ, this is like 36 minutes. Let's get to the rating. This is different than what I expected, especially because of the preview time. I haven't loved an AC game as a whole, and the new ones really, I think only Odyssey worked for me initially, despite liking parts of it. And Shadows is that same way. If you're new to this is not a bad place to start, though its initial slowness may actually confuse you, especially if you hear a lot of people complain about the AC games just being almost too action porn. The addition of Prone has helped the game immensely, even though it's still got some Ubisoft jank in there. But the polish has also helped that. It is an odd series where you start to look at it and you start playing it and you're like, this is great, but there's still some oddities here and there.
Okay, not bad. It's 2-character system, new stealth system, weapon skills, exploration, AI changes, destructible items. That's not bad. Not good. Iceberg speed starting, some voiceover work or voice work. Music is all over the place, heavy system specs, and open world randomness. I have to say, the pros and cons, there's more pros than cons, what we've listened to and watched out of these 4 reviews.
If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed as world exploration and just...
I'm not going to be playing it, Aaron. I haven't bought an Assassin's Creed or played an Assassin's Creed game since I keep forgetting if it's Unity or whatever the one's... No, not Unity. I forget what the one it's called. Syndicate. That's the last one I played. Didn't really enjoy it.
Just all-around exploration kill fantasies. This is more than enough. And
to answer that question, is it woke? The reviews that we watch don't normally talk about if it's woke or not. They just talk about the game, right? They just talk about the game as far as technical stuff, voice, sound, gameplay, story. That's what they talk about.
And I honestly can't stress enough to turn the difficulty in combat difficulties to their highest. Though stealth at its highest does require unique strategies when up on the roofs, prior to the past games at least. Does it make the game worse that some of these issues are here? Yeah, we'd like for everything to be fixed, but they're not. I think this is a solid title, more solid than I expected, but doesn't really hit exactly where I personally would want. So if you're thinking about getting this game and you're okay with those caveats, I would say, well worth it. If those caveats sound a little bit odd to you and maybe you need to see some more about the game, maybe hold off. And if all of this is not the changes that you wanted, or if you thought it was going to be completely free of Ubisoft jank, well, this is definitely not the game you want. This will be available day one for GeForce Now and Xbox Stream games that you own on the Xbox Cloud as well. See, on the flip side, that's it for me. Check out the Patreon. Follow me on Jeremy Penner on Twitter. And, of course, you can check out the podcast every single Friday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we're going to dive into more of this. Peace out.
I haven't had the honor of meeting him. I've only dealt with his agents.
Yes. That is how he would have.
Okay, so I haven't heard dialogue at all, and this is the first dialogue I've heard. It sounds like the actors, and again, this is nothing against the actors, but it sounds like people that English is not their second language, or I should say their first language, sorry, okay? And it sounds like they're speaking like they don't know English, which is fine, but I would probably play this game in the native language and put subtitles on. But this is my 2 cents.
Arranged it. What is the name of this agent?
He told me his name was Chuta.
I do not know him, but I will.
Heiji, you did not fight back.
I do not spill.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a Japanese actress asking to speak English, and English is not her first language. I would rather listen to them in their foreign, like in their homeland language, and then put English subtitles on.
Blood. I make tools.
They could have killed you.
Yes, perhaps.
I hope I am as brave when death comes for me.
Any lending you can walk away from is good enough.
I've come to stay with you.
What?
What? There are no foes fiercer than these. Can you overcome them?
I know you are undefeated. No other man has dared challenge you.
All right. It sounds like if I did a Japanese accent. Okay? I'm going to read the line as I would stereotypically do, thinking I'm Japanese. Are you ready? No other man has ever dared challenge you, but that is precisely why I have sought you out. That's exactly what it sounds like they're doing. Do you see what I'm saying? That sounds, it doesn't sound good.
But that is precisely why I have sought you out.
Spoken like a samurai. I am Marume Tessai Nageyoshi.
I would definitely play it with subtitles and let them speak Japanese. Yeah. All right. So we watched 4 videos. We watched 4 different reviews. I think all of them are pretty good. Okay. I would say that Assassin's Creed is exactly what Assassin's Creed is. And what Assassin's Creed has always been. It's been a good game. I feel like there's not a big waft of, like, for the game. We're just talking about the game. We're not talking about the metrics outside the game. The game looks good. Visually, it looks good. The gameplay looks good. The voice acting doesn't sound very good for the small bits that we heard out of the 2.5 hours of reviews we saw. So go watch some gameplay or whatnot. If it's not a big sell for you as far as the voice acting or the story, and you just want to go around being an assassin and in feudal Japan, then by all means, you're going to like it. If you like Assassin's Creed before, you're going to like Assassin's Creed now, right? Not a big shocker here. If you're a person that's on the fence and you're like, I don't know if I really want to play this, I don't know if I want to spend the $70, I would hold off. I would hold off because even 2 of the reviews said that there are a little bit of bugs that it's underbaked right now. Okay, so just wait, patch or 2. But overall, it seems like it's a good game. I think that the stats that we saw, or the scores that we saw, which of right now, let me refresh to see if they had any reviews of people, right? It's still at 81% over on OpenCritic. It's still at 81% over on Metacritic. 87 for Xbox, 81 for PlayStation, and 78 for PC. I think you'll like it. So, all right, let's see what you guys are saying here. Eclipse says, "Yeah, I'm watching Angry Joe's show play it, and that's what he's playing. He's on Japanese. Yeah, it seems like it would probably be much. Actually, you know what? Is he playing it right now? Is he live right now? I want to hear." Hold on. Is he playing it? I don't see him. I want to hear the Japanese. Does he have another channel? I have the Angry Joe show. What's his other channel? That's trailer reaction. I see review. Can't send links. Yeah, do it in Discord. Do it in Discord. Thank you. Oh, it's Twitch. That's why. I was looking on YouTube. All right, let me see. I just want to see the dialogue. You can't rewind in this, right? Because it's live. We'll just watch some live gameplay here to see what. Shh. That's exactly what I would do, Joe. Yeah, I think if you're a person that likes Assassin's Creed, it's a pickup. If you're a person that's on the fence about Assassin's Creed, it's a wait.
Ow. Hide in the shadows.
Yeah, see, this is exactly how I would play. I would play exactly how Joe's playing right now. Slow, methodical, going through.
Huh? He's dead. Someone's here.
Why can't I assassinate him? And I can't grab him.
He's big. He's elite. He can't see you because it's too dark.
Show your face. Here, die. They're left the building. Finish.
He doesn't know where you are. Oh, here he comes. Yeah, see, I like that. Little stab, 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 stab. There you go. I just want one
Cool
cutscene.
pose. see, though.
Yeah, it's fine. What time? It's almost... We'll stay live for like another 10 minutes or so. Yeah, this is exactly how I would play. I play super stealthy. Try not to get seen at all. Take one out, one by one. Yeah, take him out, then take her out. Or wait for him to turn around, then jump on her.
Get closer.
Yeah, no. Jump behind. Yeah, get her first. Yep. Now take him out. I think there's one more person below you. That's all right. All turn.
Ow.
We get to see live gameplay instead of the male needs a nerf and the woman needs a buff.
What? Got new stuff.
I was like, oh, he was just there. It's the same building he was in. Is there field of view sliders?
Yeah, top tier. Something like that, Doc.
Yeah, I really like the old AC stuff, AC games.
Let's get this. And I could open up the other spot, I think.
Shindang, you've caused a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think it's Assassin's Creed. It's an Assassin's Creed.
Just find me along the way, Don
Return to the
Quixote.
monks at Minobiki Falls.
Oh,
No, not yet. We still got a lot to loot.
we can hear a little bit of what she said.
I don't know why. I
Yeah, we'll see.
climbed.
We'll see what the overall
Just gone through
sales
that.
is. I think they've done. I think Ubisoft has done more damage than the game itself. I think if they just shut their mouth and didn't do what they said and didn't do the Tory Gate and all the other stuff, and I think it was just a perfect storm of what was happening. I think if they just let the game talk for itself, I think it would be just fine. Let the game speak for itself. But unfortunately, we're not in there, right? And unfortunately, we're at a point now where there's problems because of all the mouth opening that they've done and all the things that they said and all the news articles. And then it doesn't even help even more that you have the media defending them, and which makes it worse because they're like fanning the flames. They should just let the games. All developers should let the games speak for themselves. Let the games speak for themselves. People will look at it. Again, I always take the analogy, right? My grass looks perfect, right? I look at it and go, man, that grass looks fantastic. But if I get down and start looking at the grass, I can see that there's weeds in there. I can see that there's bugs in there. I can see that there's different things and divots. And I'm like, now I'm starting to infatuate that there's something wrong with the grass. Even though, just look at the grass looks good. But when you get down, you start looking for stuff, you're going to find it. You're going to find it. Right? Avowed did it. Veilguard did it. Assassin's Creed's doing it. It's just like, and they're not helping themselves right now. They're not helping themselves right now by saying criticism is harassment. And it's stupid. It's stupid. Let the game just shine. Let the game just be the game. All right, so hopefully on today's show, I help somebody out, okay? All right, I help somebody out. If you were on the fence about Assassin's Creed Shadows and you're like, you know what? I was thinking about getting it. I'm not going to get it. I was thinking about not getting it, and now I'm getting it. We watched 4 different reviews. We talked about news stories. We talked about how the developers themselves say if this doesn't sell well, they're in trouble. So now it's up to you guys, right? You decide if you want to play the game or not play the game, if you want to support the company or not support the company, but that is your right to do, okay? Don't care about if it's an 81, an 82, an 83, okay? If you like the game, buy the game. If you don't like the game, don't buy the game, right? But don't defend, right? Don't defend that if the game has criticism, defend the criticism. Everyone's allowed to criticize and everyone's allowed to enjoy, and that's just it. This is going to do it for me today. We'll be back tonight to play more Split Fiction with Sarge tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you like it, go over to our 30 and Still Gaming channel. We're going to play more Split Fiction with Sarge. And then if you don't come tonight, we'll be back tomorrow morning for the Daily Grind. I appreciate it very much. You guys have a great rest of your day, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Keep on turning, Ubisoft dreams are burning. A samurai game, oh what a scene. Yasuo's chopping heads to a rap beat supreme. Fans cried out for Japan so long. Now they're mad, it's history gone wrong. A black samurai, a shinobi lass. Internet's ablaze, torching up the grass. Sweet feudal Japan, where the continents clash and the trolls all spam. Sweet feudal Japan, Ubisoft's drama's hotter than a ramen pan. Naoi's sneaking, swift and sly. Yasuke's bashing with a battle cry. The gameplay shines, the world's so grand, but the culture wars got folks in a stand. D's a curse, they scream online. Elon tweeted, art's not fine. Historians shrug, he was real, you see. But the grifters yell, not my AC. Sweet feudal Japan, where the trailers drop and the hate began. Sweet feudal Japan, Ubisoft's fighting fate with a shaky plan. Now the team's delayed it twice, they swear. Polishing the game with tender care. Canceled preview, strikes at the door. Layoffs hit 18.5, no more. Torygate broke, shrine folks mad. Historical flops, so that's so sad. Yet pre-orders hold like Odyssey's glow. Will it sink or soar? Man, we don't know. Sweet feudal Japan, where the shadows creep and the fans all ran. Sweet feudal Japan, Ubisoft's riding high on a wild scale. Parody games popping up for kicks. Yasuke simulator, guns and tricks. Ubisoft's legacy's on the line. Can Shadow save them one more time? The good's the stealth, the bad's the flack. The drama's thick, there's no turning back. From Sengoku dreams to corporate schemes, this AC tale's bursting at the seams. Sweet feudal Japan, where the blades stay sharp and the haters tan. Sweet feudal Japan, Ubisoft saga's wilder than